Early in the morning, when Tian Tian woke up, she saw that Shui Ruo was still sitting beside Ling Chen, gazing at his face. Seeing that Tian Tian had woken up, she warmly smiled. Tian Tian, you're awake. Big sister will go make breakfast soon. Tian Tian knew that Shui Ruo had gone yet another night without sleeping. So far, she had stayed beside Ling Chen for a whole 2 days and 2 nights, and would not leave his side unless she absolutely had to. Seeing this, Tian Tian's heart ached as she cried out, "Big sister, please get some rest. You haven't slept in such a long time, and you'll get sick if you keep going like this. We'll take good care of big brother, and if he wakes up we'll immediately let you know, alright?" Shui Ruo knew that Tian Tian was worried about her, and she patted her back as she gently shook her head. "Without seeing big brother wake up, I won't be able to fall asleep. Don't worry, I'm not tired at all. I'll make some porridge while you have a shower." Just as Shui Ruo stood up, her vision suddenly darkened, and she fell sideways. If it wasn't for the wall, she would have crashed onto the floor. Tian Tian quickly ran over to support her, as she cried out, "Big sister, are you alright? What happened?" "I'm alright, it's just that I've been sitting down for too long. I felt a bit dizzy," Shui Ruo said as she smiled. "Tian Tian, I'll have to trouble you to look after big brother while I'm cooking." After going 2 days and 2 nights without resting, Shui Ruo was not in very good shape. However, she was determined to stay by Ling Chen's side until he recovered. Tian Tian could only obediently nod, as she watched Shui Ruo leave the room. Shui Ruo's body felt like it was weighed down by something heavy, and she couldn't muster up much strength. She hadn't experienced this feeling ever since she got rid of the Isrock disease. Moreover, her head also felt slightly dizzy. Perhaps it was because she hadn't slept in a long time, and both her body and mind were incredibly tired, so Shui Ruo didn't mind it too much. After walking into the kitchen, a piercing pain came from her chest, and she pressed one hand against her chest and the other against her mouth as she coughed. After coughing for a long time, she took her hand away from her mouth and saw that her hand was covered with black blood. She looked at her hand in shock as her vision became a bit hazy. Mystic Moon World, Yan Huang Alliance, Young Master, 2 pieces of good news. Just as Long Tian Yun logged on, Flame Shadow immediately came over to speak to him. "Speak." Long Tian Yun replied. Flame Shadow immediately reported, "The first is that there are only 3 days of protection left for Heart's Dream, and we have found their headquarters. They haven't found a proper place for it yet, so it's still in a small house in the northern residential area. The guild sign should be there. That place doesn't have any defenses, so it should be incredibly easy to destroy it." "Very good." Long Tian Yun nodded in satisfaction. He would not allow anyone to sit on top of the Yan Huang Alliance. Even if he had to hurt Yun Meng Xian, he wouldn't show any mercy. Ling Tian's not an idiot, so he might have something hidden up his sleeve. Make adequate preparations, and destroy it as soon as their protection runs out. "Roger." Flame Shadow nodded, as he continued to speak. "The second piece of good news is sure to make young master happy. We've already discovered Ling Tian's real-life identity, as well as where he is residing." Long Tian Yun's eyes narrowed as he suddenly stood up and asked, "Have you confirmed this?" "We're 100% certain." Flame Shadow confidently replied, "The evidence that it's Ling Tian is irrefutable." "Continue." Flame Shadow immediately sent a photo from his communication device to Long Tian Yun. There were 3 people in this photo, and Flame Shadow explained, "This person is called Ling Chen and this girl is called Ling Shui Ruo, and is supposedly Ling Chen's little sister. 2 years ago, they moved from Zhongzhou to Beijing, in order to look for a way to cure Ling Shui Ruo's Isrock disease. Their parents died 2 years ago from the Isrock disease. This small girl's name is Ling Tian Tian, and she's allegedly a relative from Zhongzhou. They're currently living in number 12, Tian Yuan District. All of our information corroborates, and his surname is even Ling, which I'm sure is no coincidence. Any conclusive evidence? Long Tianyun asked. There's quite a lot, Flame Shadow replied. We found that place because 2 days ago, there were people who called the police about strangers and strange cars appearing at that district, so we heard about that place by chance. We found that there was a family living there that seemed to match what we were looking for, so we did an in-depth investigation. We discovered something strange though. Ling Chen brought his sister to Beijing to look for a way to cure her Isrock disease, but everyone said that recently, his sister has been quite well, and looks completely healthy. We received information from Ling Shui Ruo's doctor, and according to her, Ling Shui Ruo did indeed have the Isrock disease, and it had even spread to her inner organs. However, she used the 13223 drug, and was temporarily cured. To our knowledge, the only ones within China with the 13223 drug is the Yun family. I also found video footage of Yun Feng going to the Tianyuan district on the day Mystic Moon opened. The house he went into was house number 12. Long Tianyun, moreover, based on this we deduced that this was the reason Ling Tian has been helping Yun Meng Xian. If not for the 13223 drug that Yun Feng gave him, he would have no reason to help Yun Meng Xian so much. The relationship between the Yun siblings is quite deep, and it wouldn't be surprising at all for Yun Feng to help Yun Meng Xian in such a way. The rumor that Ling Tian was helping Yun Meng Xian in order to woo her was just a rumor made up to cover up the real reason. Furthermore, Ling Tian and his siblings have always lived alone, but there were suddenly many strangers arriving in the past few days. The only possibility is that something big had happened. This correlates with Ling Tian and his 2 sisters not being online for the past few days. The princesses of the Shao and Su family have been online, but they seem to be quite worried about something. This is enough to prove Ling Tian's real-life identity. Long Tianyun silently listened to Flame Shadow's report. After Flame Shadow stopped speaking, Long Tianyun's eyes narrowed as he drummed on the table with his fingers, thinking to himself. He suddenly spoke, "Have you investigated the backgrounds of the strangers who suddenly appeared?" Flame Shadow shook his head. Those people have excellent counter-espionage skills, so in order not to alert them, we decided not to take any action. Long Tianyun slowly stood up and he coldly smiled. Very good. Looks like his real-life identity isn't so simple either, and he has capable people supporting him as well. However, unless he's stupid, he wouldn't have made mistakes like that, and would have concealed those people around him. Thus, the only possibility is that something happened to him in real life, something big. That means now is the perfect time to strike. Flame Shadow looked at Long Tianyun as he asked, "Young master, do you mean? No matter who Ling Tian is, he must die, today?" Flame Shadow quickly nodded, "I understand. Before midnight tonight, young master will receive the good news." Everyone knew that Long Tianyun completely and utterly hated Ling Tian. Now that he knew Ling Tian's real-life identity, he was going to make sure that Ling Tian was quickly sent to the underworld. Now was the perfect opportunity to make this into reality. For breakfast, Shui Ruo only ate a small bowl of porridge and couldn't eat any more. She told Tian to eat up, then returned to the bedroom and sat next to Ling Chen. She was so focused on him that she didn't even notice when other people entered the room and stood next to her. Seeing Shui Ruo like this, the cold aura around Mu Bingyao began to thaw. She felt quite complicated towards Shui Ruo. She had become the most important person to Ling Chen, and yet Mu Bingyao was unable to hate her or even be jealous. Instead, she actually cared about her and wanted to protect her. Perhaps this was Shui Ruo's charm, the charm that had caused Ling Chen to want to protect her with his life, and to be willing to give up everything for her. "Don't worry, like they said, he'll wake up by today at the latest," Mu Bingyao softly said. As she spoke, her eyebrows shot up when she saw Shui Ruo's face. It was incredibly pale and sickly. Thank you to our Patreon supporters, Anon, Lord_of_Fapping, Dryzak, Shabalabak, Norwegian Viking, Zeromas, Pickles the Drummer, Kozakavoth, Thug Deer, Wolfpack Omega, Agile_Shah, Anthony Folkestone, Zeker, Anon, Amrobi, Gresmy, Janaf, Cicero, Adam S., Bad Badger, Theta, Decimo. The paleness of Shui Ruo's face caused Mu Bingyao to feel incredibly worried. Even Shui Ruo's cherry-red lips were now without a trace of blood. Hearing Mu Bingyao's words, Ling Shui Ruo gently shook her head as she said, "I'm fine. Maybe it's because I haven't rested well these days." Her voice was soft and light, as though she was making no effort to raise it. When speaking, she was still blankly looking at Ling Chen, and Mu Bingyao could see that her eyes were not even focused. Slowly, Shui Ruo reached out with her hand, putting it on top of Ling Chen's as she softly whispered, "Big Sister Bingyao, I would like to sleep for a while. Please take care of Big Brother." "All right." All of them were desperate for Shui Ruo to immediately get some rest. Hearing her say this, Mu Bingyao didn't feel anything was off, and breathed a sigh of relief. "All right, go and rest. When you're awake, perhaps Master will already be awake. I'll take you to your room." "No need," Shui Ruo said as she shook her head, "let me sleep here. I want to stay with Big Brother, so that when Big Brother wakes up, the first thing he sees is me. I have a lot of things I need to tell him. So please don't let me and Big Brother be separated, okay?" No matter how cold-blooded one was, seeing Shui Ruo like this was enough to make their heart bleed. None of them could bear to insist otherwise. Mu Bingyao nodded, "Okay, have a good rest. Master will wake up soon." "Thank you, Big Sister Bingyao." Shui Ruo weakly smiled. She held on to Ling Chen's hand tightly as she sat on the chair and rested her upper body onto the bed. Her voice almost became a whisper, "I don't have the power to protect Big Brother or take care of him, so in future, please protect him and take care of him, and also, tell Big Sister Meng Xian, Chi Chi and Su Su. I really like them." Then, although in a seemingly uncomfortable position, Shui Ruo drifted out of consciousness and into a deep sleep. Shui Ruo's words caused Mu Bingyao a bit of heartache, but she did not find anything strange about them. She assumed that Ling Chen's wounds had too much of a mental blow on her, causing her to feel guilty that she couldn't do anything for him. The latter part of the sentence was probably because she hadn't seen the other girls in Heart's Dream for a while. Mu Bingyao faintly sighed, took the bedside blanket and gently covered Shui Ruo's back, then as best she could, silently tiptoed out of the door. Upon exiting the room, Mu Bingyao saw Tian hurrying over with a bowl of hot soup. This was the sweet soup she had finally managed to make. Mu Bingyao stopped her, and gestured to be quiet. Tian, don't go in, your sister is asleep. Let's not wake her up." Really?" Tian yelled out in joy. However, she immediately covered her mouth and vigorously nodded. She crept back slowly while carrying the soup, for fear of making any noise. The summer days were quite long and the night only began to fall after 7 p.m. Today's dinner was cooked by Mu Bingyao. Although she hadn't cooked in a while, her skills had not slipped by much, if at all. This was evidenced by Tian's saliva flowing to the ground upon seeing and smelling the food. All afternoon, she did not dare to enter Ling Chen's room for fear of disturbing the resting Shui Ruo. For Ling Chen, whose body healed extremely quickly, his injury was no worry at all. However, Shui Ruo's body, on the other hand, was something to be distressed about. She had finally fallen asleep, and everyone was so relieved and could not bear to disturb her. Tian, who wanted to tell Shui Ruo that dinner was ready, gently opened the door. She saw that Shui Ruo was peacefully asleep on the bed, and so quietly closed the door. After eating dinner, she went to the living room, turned on the TV and muted it. She uninterestedly stared at the screen as she waited for Shui Ruo and Ling Chen to wake up. Outside of the window. These days, Guiya was always close by Ling Chen. Usually, only 2 or 3 people stayed here at a time, waiting for Ling Chen's orders. Only if a major event had occurred, or if he had personally been summoned, would he appear. Because of Ling Chen's abilities, he did not require any protection. It would be more appropriate for Ling Chen to be the one protecting the others. However, with Ling Chen unconscious, Guoye couldn't feel at ease without being nearby. "Guoye, we seem to have been noticed." A shadowy figure behind him whispered. We were noticed from the first day. These 3 days, there have been 7 separate groups of people investigating us, but they've never been close. For such a thing to happen, it's not strange for us to be noticed. I hope that this won't cause Master's identity to be exposed, Guoye said. He was at a dimly lit corner of the roof, where he could see far away into the distance while remaining unseen. Yao Ying and Qian Mo said that Master should wake up tonight. What time is it now? It's just past 8. After Master wakes up, immediately return to your posts. Don't neglect the other matters. Hell is dead, so nothing can threaten the safety of Master. As for Eve, upon mentioning this name, Guoye and the dark figure looked at each other and chuckled. Right, how do we deal with Hell's body? Guoye suddenly asked. He's Bing Yao's father, so we should bury him properly. Also, although Hell is dead, there isn't the slightest sign of injury to his body externally. Who cares? All that matters is that he's dead. Humph, how can that demon be fit to be Bing Yao's father? Guoye spat. Whenever he mentioned Hell, his body would release murderous intent. Ling Chen's recovery was on everyone's mind, but at the same time, there was nothing to be worried about. Their only concern was that this would lead to some unwanted consequences, such as the Tianyuan district was not very well lit, and in the darkness, Guoye's eagle-like eyes flashed. He slowly stood up straight and sneered, those idiotic troublemakers are making a move. 5 o'clock, 9 o'clock, 1 o'clock, 3 directions, with around 10 people in each direction. They're within 100 meters, and they seem to be carrying guns and other weapons. Since the guests have come, let's give them all a big gift. Get rid of them as quickly as possible, and find out their backgrounds. The shadow nodded, and disappeared into the darkness. As the wind blew through the otherwise silent night, Guoye stood motionless, his eyes fixed on the distance as he muttered, have we been exposed? 3 groups of people, all from different directions, slowly approached the number 12 house of the Tianyuan district. They were all dressed in plain clothes, casually walking and conversing as if they were a group of friends who had just come back from dinner. Their task was to test the waters, but they never thought that as soon as they had entered the district, they were exposed. After all, they were up against the reapers from Hell, existences that were more like demons than humans. All of the security cameras in the district had failed at the same time, but the lights of the security hall were still on. However, the doors, both inside and outside, were locked, while the staff on duty inside lay in the monitoring station motionless. As they came closer to their target, they knew that although their goal was simple, they couldn't leave any traces in this important mission. If they couldn't guarantee that, they would have to eliminate their target by any means, regardless. By the time they were only 50 meters away from the target building, they were still talking and laughing, nothing out of the ordinary. However, at this moment, a number of black silhouettes appeared from behind. Then, a split second later, silence. They all stopped walking, and fell backwards. They hadn't even heard any sounds, nor did they even have an opportunity to cry out before they were killed, much less see who killed them or retaliate. We finished them all off, a total of 27. Very soon, Guoye received the news. Killing, to them, was approached with as much nonchalance as mowing the grass. It was still unclear to them where these people had come from or what their goal was, but for the safety of Ling Chen, they would not allow these people to come close to him. Killing them was the best way to guarantee this. Their background? Guoye asked. The Long family. Guoye. The thing he had least wanted to happen, had finally happened. The Long family's intelligence network was simply too vast. Long Tianyun had been investigating Ling Tian's real-life identity for a long time. The people from just then were sent by the Long family. Now that the people they sent had disappeared, Ling Chen's identity and location had finally been exposed. Prepare our defenses, that was probably just a test. Since they've started to move, they won't give us any space to breathe. Gueye quickly ordered. Then, looking out into the distance, he muttered to himself, "It looks like we won't be able to stay in Beijing anymore. After this ordeal, where will Master choose to go?" "What? You lost contact with all of them?" "Humph, don't bother trying again. Looks like the other side found them and killed them all. It seems that we're not up against any ordinary people. Since they found out, they must be making preparations, they might even be moving as we speak. What's our next course of action? Do not give them even the slightest opportunity to breathe or escape. Since they have already been alerted, we do not need to hide, use whatever means necessary to kill the target. Remember to bring heavy weaponry. If the opposition is too dangerous, blow them to kingdom come. But if that's the case. No buts. That man must die. This is an order from young master. The police will not go there, and you don't need to concern yourself with the consequences. Roger, we'll definitely complete the task. Thank you to our Patreon supporters, Anon, Lord_of_Fapping, Dryzak, Shabalabak, Norwegian Viking, Zero Mass, Pickles the Drummer, Kazakavoth, Thugdeer, Wolfpack Omega, Advin, Agile_Shah, Anthony Folkeston, Zeker, Anon, Amro B, Gresmy, Janaf, Cicero, Adam S, Bad Badger, Theta, Decimo. 15 cars in total, with 70 or so people. And they're all bulletproof cars. It'll be impossible to destroy them. What? Gueye's voice was filled with shock. How many people do we have? 14. Tell everyone to come here. We can't let these people enter the house. Tell everyone in Beijing to get here ASAP. In order to deal with Ling Chen, they had actually dispatched 15 bulletproof vehicles. These vehicles belonged to one of the Long family's 7 most powerful and secret forces. They would only appear in important situations, and were directly under the command of the Long family. Every single vehicle was extremely expensive, and were equipped with state-of-the-art defenses. Normal bullets couldn't do a thing to them. In fact, they were comparable to even tanks. However, this wasn't the most terrifying thing about them. What Gueye was worried about was their destructive power. Every vehicle was equipped with extremely powerful heavy weapons. Bastards! Is the Long family crazy? They actually sent out a force like this in public. Are they not afraid of the repercussions? Even if Long Tianyun hates Ling Chen, this is simply ridiculous. In the darkness, 14 shadows gathered around the number 12 house. Every person's body was releasing a chilling aura. The sounds of the cars drew nearer and nearer, and soon, there were 15 identical bulletproof vehicles surrounding the number 12 house. The doors of the cars were almost simultaneously opened, and the soldiers filed out one by one. Every person was holding a heavy machine gun. Moreover, all of them were wearing thick metallic armor. It seemed that the Long family was willing to do anything in order to kill Ling Chen. Kill them all. Gueye issued out the command, and as the soldiers were still exiting the cars, more than 10 shadows suddenly appeared. They were like 10 or so demonic shadows, and stealthily closed in on the intruders before they even noticed them. Each of them was wearing heavy armor, and holding heavy machine guns that even 3 or 4 normal people would have struggled to hold. Evidently, these people were all formidable existences. On the battlefield, these sorts of people were pretty much humanoid tanks. These people weren't simple assassins, they were one of the most terrifying forces in all of China. There were about 1,000 or so people in this force, and in order to destroy Ling Chen, the Long family had actually mobilized around 100 of them. Indeed, Long Tianyun had the authority to order these soldiers. The hatred he held for Ling Chen was such that he simply didn't care about the consequences. However, these people who had walked out of hell with Ling Chen were the strongest out of the strongest. They were all world-renowned assassins, and the Dark Knight made the situation extremely favorable towards them. Seeing these ghastly shadows, the soldiers didn't panic at all, but instead raised their heavy machine guns as easily as raising a pistol. There were no words exchanged. The sound of the heavy machine guns being rapidly fired filled the air, and cries of shock and fright erupted from around the district. All of the houses' lights were now off, and families all huddled together in the corners of their houses. Many of them picked up the phone to call the police, but this was futile. After all, the Long family had already ordered that without their permission, not a single police officer was to go there, no matter what. The bullets from the heavy machine guns all had incredible destructive power and speed. It would be impossible for these Reapers from hell to withstand more than a few hits. However, these heavy machine guns had their own drawbacks. Because there was too much recoil, the accuracy of the guns wasn't great. With their speed and judgment honed in hell, it wasn't too difficult for the assassins to dodge them. After one round of wildly firing, not a single assassin had fallen. However, Ling Chen's house was already riddled with countless bullet holes, and most of the glass had shattered. The Reapers immediately retaliated. As soon as they got close enough, they turned into death gods, using countless methods to kill their targets. A flash of light glinted in the darkness. Clang! Guiya's dagger had struck against his target's neck, but what resulted was the sound of metal clashing against metal. These soldiers were covered from head to toe in armor, and normal bullets wouldn't even be able to hurt them. However, Guiya did not despair or panic. Within the darkness, he found his target's eyes, and pierced them with his dagger. Arg! The soldier's scream pierced through the air. Guiya kicked him away while grabbing his heavy machine gun, and started to fire at the other soldiers. His vision wasn't hampered by the darkness at all, and he was able to fire both rapidly and accurately. The only part of the soldiers' bodies that was exposed was their eyes. As such, every bullet Guiya shot out always hit his target in their eyes or forehead. Every time he shot, agonizing cries would fill the air. After these people reached the underworld, Hades was sure to tell them how stupid they were for angering these demons from hell. Compared to Guiya, Mu Bingyao's actions were much more graceful and efficient. Every time she attacked, blood would spurt out from her victims. The dagger in her hands looked ordinary, but it was able to easily pierce through the armor, cutting many throats. The dagger was called Icy Hell, and the creator was the mad scientist. It could cut through metal as easily as cutting through tofu. It had originally belonged to Ling Chen, but he had given it to Mu Bingyao. Whether it was their armor, weapons or numbers, the Reapers were all disadvantaged. This sort of heavy armored and weaponed force could even face up against a normal army. However, these Reapers were all true death gods. They had been trained how to efficiently kill since young, as well as how to keep themselves alive. If they wanted to take someone's life, they could do it in an instant. However, if someone wanted to take their life, it would be even more difficult than reaching the skies. The tens of heavy machine guns would be enough to strew the ground with corpses. However, although the assassins' bodies were hit multiple times, not a single person fell down. It was impossible for them to dodge every single bullet, but they wouldn't allow their vitals to be hit. Although the soldiers were covered in full-body armor, their eyes were unprotected, which was enough for the assassins to instantly kill them. The sounds of guns being fired and screams filled the night sky. More and more corpses fell to the ground, dyeing the ground blood red. However, still, not a single Reaper had fallen. Even if they were hit by a bullet, they wouldn't slow down at all. Although this was simply incomprehensible and impossible to normal people, they had gone through experiences like this many times. Mobilizing 15 bulletproof vehicles and close to 100 elite soldiers to eliminate a single target seemed like a joke. To them, using such a force to crush a single person was simply overkill. Usually, with their equipment and skills, just 2 or 3 people would be more than enough. As such, they had not felt even the slightest pressure when tasked with this mission. However, while fighting they discovered that they were wrong, completely wrong. What was awaiting them were 14 people. No, they weren't humans. They were simply demons. Under the dense barrage of bullets from the heavy machine guns, not a single assassin fell. Their bodies were covered with blood, and the bullets were hitting them, but none of them made any noise, and didn't slow down at all. On the other hand, the soldiers were equipped with heavy armor, and yet they were screaming and falling one by one. What was going on? Were these people even human? Even if it was the Xianyuan family, such a thing would be impossible. Big sister, big sister. Wake up, big sister. Most of the glass in the house had been shattered, many bullets would fly through the walls. Ling Chen was still unconscious, and a terrified Tian shook Shui Ruo as hard as she could, trying to wake her up. However, no matter how hard she yelled, or how hard she shook her, there was no response from Shui Ruo. She seemed to be in a very deep sleep. Thank you to our Patreon supporters, Anon, Lord_of_Fapping, Dryzak, Shabalabak, Norwegian Viking, Zero Mass, Pickles the Drummer, Kazakavoth, Thugdeer, Wolfpack Omega, Advin, Agile_Shah, Anthony Folkeston, Zeker, Anon, Amro B, Gresmy, Janaf, Cicero, Adam S, Bad Badger, Theta, Decimo. What do you mean? Long Tian Yun asked with his eyes narrowed. This wasn't something he had wanted to hear. Our men have been suppressed, and close to half of them have died already. Flame Shadow said, a layer of cold sweat on his forehead. Evidently, he was also shocked that such a thing could occur. What? Long Tian Yun shot to his feet, as his face darkened. They're the Steel Dragon Corps. Did they underestimate the enemy by not making sufficient preparations? No. The Steel Dragon Corps would never underestimate their enemies. All of them went fully equipped. Young Master knows how powerful they are, but they said that their enemies are a group of demons. Flame Shadow said as his voice quivered. How many enemies are there? Long Tian Yun was extremely clear about how powerful the Steel Dragon Corps were. He would only use them for the most important missions, and they had never failed before. F-14. Even Flame Shadow couldn't believe this information. With only 14 people, the enemy was actually suppressing 75 Steel Dragon Corps soldiers. Long Tian Yun, this number was enough to make anyone speechless. Long Tian Yun's face darkened even further, but he managed to calm himself down. He coldly ordered, use the heavy weapons to blow up that house and everyone inside. Flame Shadow already knew that Long Tian Yun would most likely give such an order. Long Tian Yun had grown up showered with praise and admiration. Ling Tian had given him the biggest humiliation of his life, causing Long Tian Yun to become consumed with vengeance. In order to kill Ling Tian, Long Tian Yun simply didn't care about anything anymore. Flame Shadow deeply breathed in as he replied, but young master, if we use such weapons, the consequences will be unthinkable. The best-case scenario is that there is small-scale chaos and panic, however, the worst-case scenario is that there could be international repercussions. After all, this is China's capital, and the residents of the Tianyuan district are mostly upper-class citizens. Also, if Master finds out, I've already taken care of everything on my father's side. Think about this. 10 or so people are able to completely suppress 75 fully equipped Steel Dragon Corps, and yet we've never heard about these people before. Moreover, these people will always be our enemies, and will never be able to come to our side. Would my father allow these sorts of people to continue to exist? If they were allowed to live, even my father would be uneasy about it. Long Tianyun coldly replied. Flame Shadow knew that he wouldn't be able to change his young master's mind. Moreover, if they didn't act, it was possible that all of the Steel Dragon Corps would die there. Ling Tian was already a big problem for them in the virtual world. If they didn't quickly get rid of him, they would also have a formidable enemy in the real world. Flame Shadow could only heed his young master's commands as he went out from the room. He turned on his communication device and issued out the order, Young Master orders the house to be completely leveled. Young Master will take care of the consequences. The Steel Dragon Corps had never failed before, and had never felt fear when facing an enemy before. However, that was against normal enemies. Against these 14 people who did not even have any armor, they felt fear for the first time. Their comrades continued to fall to the ground, screaming in agony, whereas not a single person had fallen on the other side. In the darkness, they could move quickly and stealthily like shadows. Their speed could make even an Olympic sprinter marvel in awe, and their footwork was incredibly complex. Their attacks were also deadly. The soldiers never knew when they would be the next to fall to the ground. Demons. They were simply a group of demons. They had originally thought that the Long family's Dark Eagle Corps, which specialized in assassination, were the best assassins in the world. However, they were utter garbage compared to these 10 or so demons. Against them, the morale of the Steel Dragon Corps quickly plummeted. They had never expected that there would be such terrifying enemies in the world. Even the best armored troops they had faced off against in the past weren't able to kill and injure them to such an extent. Gueye and the others all had different levels of injuries. The most injured of them had more than 10 bullets in their bodies, and all of them were covered in blood. However, not a single one of them fell down or retreated. Their willpower and resistance to pain was something that normal humans couldn't even imagine. Although their wounds would be incredibly serious, even fatal, to most humans, this was nothing to them. They had focused all of their willpower into killing their enemies, and completely ignored the pain. Wah! As Gueye howled in fury, the bones of 2 soldiers were shattered by Gueye's punches. Bones were some of the hardest parts of the human body, and yet Gueye was able to simultaneously break the bones of 2 soldiers with 2 punches. The next instant, Gueye disappeared into the darkness, causing those who were aiming at him to lose their target. These soldiers began to wonder if they really were facing off against demons. The young master orders everything to be destroyed. As they heard the order being issued, all of the Steel Dragon Corps shuddered inwardly. When they had arrived, they never thought that they would have to resort to such extreme methods. All of them threw away their heavy machine guns as they ran towards the armored vehicles. Don't let them get in. Their actions caused Gueye's eyebrows to shoot up as he suddenly realized something. He charged towards the soldiers nearest to him, but he was too far away. He could only watch as those people entered the armored vehicle and slammed the door shut. The vehicle was started, and the top suddenly opened, as 3 dark metal pipes emerged, pointing at the house. Stop! This scene caused everyone to stare in horror. Gueye madly rushed over, but the Steel Dragon Corps were too fast. The moment Gueye yelled out, 3 missiles were shot out from the barrels and exploded onto the house. Boom! Everyone got down on the ground as the deafening explosion rang out. The beautiful house exploded, as sand, dirt and smoke filled the air. Master! Master's still inside, as well as Shui Ruo and the kid. Mu Bingyao didn't say anything as she charged into the smoke. Arg! Gueye furiously howled, and his body felt like it was burning with anger. He raggedly breathed and jumped onto an armored vehicle that was preparing to fire, and once again yelled out as he punched onto the reinforced glass. Blood splattered everywhere as many of the bones in his hand broke, but the reinforced glass also broke. Gueye's fist broke through the glass and heavily smashed onto the soldier's forehead, causing it to explode. Just this was unable to relieve the fury within Guiya's heart. The viciousness and savageness that the Reapers had suppressed after entering the human world exploded out, and they leapt towards the intruders. Even though their bodies were shot many times, they didn't let out even a single cry of pain. The massive explosion, as well as the demonic howls once again caused the district to erupt into cries of fear and horror. The residents were still desperately trying to call the police, but the police still had not arrived. In their hurry, the 3 missiles had not been properly aimed, and taking into account that this was one of the most luxurious districts in Beijing, the firepower had been reduced. After being hit by the missiles, 75% of the house had been reduced to rubble. Only one of the rooms in the corner of the house was still fine, which was where Ling Chen and the others were. The massive explosion and shockwave caused Ling Chen to suddenly open his eyes as he sat up. His entire body was incredibly sore, and his memories of what had happened before he lost consciousness quickly came back to him. In front of him was a ruined house, as well as dirt and dust everywhere. The semi-destroyed walls and the bed he was sitting on told him that this was his house. His pupils contracted. What was going on? Was he still in some sort of nightmare? If you enjoy Shura's Wrath, please support our translations on Patreon, https://www.patreon.com/MrVoltaire, for early access to chapters. Tian's joyful, yet fearful voice sounded out beside him, causing Ling Chen to become fully awake. Smoke and dust filled the air, and half the room had collapsed. He could see that the rest of his home had already become a pile of rubble. He looked at Tian, and saw that she was trying to shake Shui Ruo awake. Big sister, please get up. Big brother's awake now. Big sister. Tian shouted at the top of her lungs and used all of her strength to shake Shui Ruo. Despite this, Shui Ruo remained asleep. Ling Chen forced his mind awake, and immediately went to pick up Shui Ruo. The moment his hands touched Shui Ruo's body, his entire body froze. This feeling. What was going on? Why was her life force so weak? It was even weaker than when she had the Isrock disease. What had happened? Shui Ruo's condition resulted in a deep feeling of fear in Ling Chen, so much that his hands started to tremble. He propped Shui Ruo up, and saw her incredibly pale face, as well as the blood that had come out of her mouth. It was almost as if something had exploded within him as Ling Chen began to yell, "Ruo Ruo! Ruo Ruo! Are you alright, Ruo Ruo? Open your eyes!" Ruo Ruo, from when the steel dragon core had appeared, Tian had been trying to wake up Shui Ruo the whole time. However, no matter what she did, Shui Ruo did not wake up. As Ling Chen continuously yelled, her eyelashes twitched, and she slowly opened her eyes. Big sister. Ruo Ruo. Seeing Shui Ruo opening her eyes, Ling Chen's voice became calmer. However, his heart sank as he saw her eyes. Shui Ruo's eyes were even more beautiful than stars, but currently, there was not a bit of light in them. He tightly hugged Shui Ruo as he cried out in a trembling voice, "Ruo Ruo, tell me, what happened? What's going on? Are you hurt? Are you feeling unwell somewhere? Is hell back? Quickly tell me what happened." After destroying Hell's organs with his mental energy and eyes, Ling Chen fell unconscious. When he woke up, he was still unaware that Hell had already been killed by him. Seeing his face and hearing his voice, Shui Ruo's pale face lit up with a weak smile. She stretched out her hands as she stroked Ling Chen's face, saying, "Thank goodness, you're awake, that's great, Ruo Ruo, are you alright? What's wrong? Quickly tell me." Ling Chen worriedly asked. He could feel no warmth at all from her body, in fact, her temperature was slowly dropping. Tian also noticed that there was something strange about Shui Ruo, and she clutched Shui Ruo's hand as she worriedly exclaimed, "Big sister, what's wrong? don't scare me like this, woo, big brother. Shui Ruo's voice was incredibly soft, and even though she was quite close, it was difficult to hear her. Can you promise me a few things? They're very important. All around them was the sound of guns, yelling and screaming, and within his arms lay Shui Ruo, looking incredibly weak and sick. It was as if he was in a terrible nightmare. Ling Chen pulled Shui Ruo even closer. Don't talk, I'll take you to a hospital. You're going to be fine, you're going to be fine. Ling Chen's voice was still trembling. Tian had never heard Ling Chen speak in such a voice before, and she started to worriedly cry. And no, big brother, promise me, you have to, Shui Ruo managed to say before she started to cough. Shui Ruo's voice had become panicked, and blood started to flow from her mouth again. Ling Chen felt as if he had been struck with thunder, and he carefully held Shui Ruo in his arms, as he nodded, all right, we'll stay here. I'll agree to anything you say. Shui Ruo calmed down, and within her hazy vision, she could see that Ling Chen's eyes were trembling, and his face was filled with fear. She knew that in his world, the only thing that could make him so worried and anxious was herself. She smiled as her vision became even more blurred. Big brother, big sister Jia Wu, loves you so much as I do. She did so much for you, big brother. You must find her, and be with her. Ruo, as well as Chi and Su. They're all so cute and kind and pretty. They're all good enough for big brother, and all like big brother a lot. Big brother can't give them to other people. I'm sure big brother will like them as well, and also big sister Bing Yao. I'm not dumb, I could tell that. She loves big brother so much, and she can also protect big brother, so big brother can't leave her either. Shui Ruo's words caused Ling Chen's heart to become even more agitated, as he said in a pained voice, Ruo, don't say these things. I'm only going to be with you for the rest of my life. No, you promised. You can't go back on your word, big brother, already promised me. Shui Ruo's voice became panicked again, and seeing her pale face wrenched Ling Chen's heart. He didn't resist anymore and nodded, all right, I promise. When Ruo gets better, we'll make them ours. As long as Ruo gives her approval, I'll snatch them over. And Shui Ruo smiled, then said in a weak voice, big brother, the second thing, big brother looks the best when he's smiling, so no matter what happens, big brother has to live smiling every day, and has to be happier than anyone else. This is my biggest wish. Big brother will fulfill this, right? Ling Chen nodded. He could only nod. With Ruo by my side, I'll be the happiest person in the world. As long as I can see Ruo every day, I'll be happier than anyone else in the world. Ruo. Shui Ruo reached out with her hands and held one of Ling Chen's and Tian's hands, and put them together. Seeing Tian's tear-stained face, Shui Ruo gently said, Tian, don't cry, you're a big kid now, so you shouldn't cry easily. In future, you need to be obedient to big brother and take care of big brother, alright? Big sister, Tian began to bawl her eyes out. All she could do was cry out, big sister. Shui Ruo used the last of her strength to squeeze their hands as she said, big brother, make sure you take care of Tian. Ling Tian vigorously nodded. Tian is part of our family, so I'll definitely take good care of her together with Shui Ruo. Ruo, you like Tian the most, so you have to hurry up and get well, so you can look after Tian and watch her grow up, right? Shui Ruo tried to maintain the smile on her face, so they wouldn't have to painfully watch her pass away, but tears started to stream down her face. She simply didn't want to leave them, and she spoke in an incredibly soft and wispy voice, big brother. Tian, we said that we'd be together forever, but, are you? Ling Chen cut her off, his face filled with pain. Don't say such silly things. We'll definitely be together forever. Definitely. We've been through so much, and we even defeated the Isrock disease. What could possibly stop us from being together? Don't say such things. You'll definitely get better. More and more tears flowed out from Shui Ruo's eyes, falling onto Ling Chen and Tian Tian. Her vision became more and more blurred, and she couldn't even see their faces anymore. Big brother. Tian Tian. I'm sorry, sorry. I'm sorry. As Shui Ruo breathed her last breath, her eyes closed, and her hands lost their strength and let go of Ling Chen and Tian Tian's hands. At that moment, Ling Chen felt like this entire world was collapsing, and that his heart was being ripped to shreds. Big sister, Tian Tian was shocked out of her wits, and started to cry again. Big sister. Big sister, quickly wake up, big sister. Death was something Ling Chen was incredibly familiar with, and he could instantly tell that there was not a bit of life within Shui Ruo. No, this wasn't real, this wasn't happening. Ling Chen's senses fell into disarray, and he couldn't even hear Tian Tian crying next to him. Everything turned into a bleak gray shade of despair. A hot gust of wind blew past, but it felt icy cold to him. He suddenly shook Shui Ruo's body, yelling, Ruo Ruo, don't sleep, open your eyes. I know you're trying to scare me, quickly open your eyes. I don't want to play this game anymore. Ruo Ruo. Ruo Ruo. Arg. Mu Bingyao had been standing behind Ling Chen for a while, and she watched in shock, her face completely pale. The only part of her that was moving were her hands, which were shaking. Everyone knew that Shui Ruo's death had nothing to do with the Long family's attack. However, Long Tianyun had chosen this time to attack, and whether it was truly his fault or not, he would be the one to shoulder the blame. The battle temporarily stopped, as the howl had partially deafened many of them, and their consciousness had also been jolted by the emotions contained in that howl. The voice was so different that the Reapers didn't even immediately realize that it was Ling Chen's voice. This is, Master's voice? Arg! Another howl pierced through the night sky, completely halting the battle. Every single person stood in their place, unsure of what was going on. The howl was also accompanied by the crying of a young girl. At this moment, a figure emerged from the ruins, and walked towards them. In that moment, an aura of absolute malice and bloodlust overcame every person and assaulted their body and mind. The Reapers saw Ling Chen's face filled with pain and hatred, as well as felt the terrible aura emanating from his body. Not a single person dared to look at him in the eyes. Master, Guoya, who was a complete stranger to fear, spoke to Ling Chen with a trembling voice as his heart also quivered. He knew that something terrible had definitely happened. This was the first time in his entire life that he had felt such a terrifying aura from a person before. Even hell didn't make him feel so much fear. Guoya gulped and stuttered, "They're from the Long family, Long family." These two words caused Ling Chen's anger to burst to a new level. The murderous aura around him once again grew, and his gaze was fixed on the Steel Dragon Corps soldiers. He howled like a beast into the night sky, Waoyawa. The howl caused every hearer's heart to clench with fear. Ling Chen's figure blurred, and he disappeared, then reappeared in front of the closest soldier. This caused all of the Reapers to stare in shock. Ling Chen was incredibly fast, but from memory, even Ling Chen at his peak wasn't as fast as this. The movement just then was comparable to teleportation. Arg! The overwhelming pressure and aura caused that soldier to become overcome with fear, and he couldn't even react. In fact, with Ling Chen moving at such a speed, he wouldn't be able to react in time anyways. Ling Chen howled in despair and hatred as he smashed his right fist towards the soldier's head. Bang! The sound was like that of a small cannon discharging, and blood splattered everywhere. The soldier's head, which was wearing a helmet that couldn't even be damaged by bullets, had been blown to smithereens. After taking that hit from Ling Chen, his head was completely gone, with his body still standing in place and blood spurting from the neck. Only after a few moments did the body fall to the ground. Arg! The demonic howl continued, and Ling Chen appeared in front of another soldier. He grabbed onto the soldier with both hands, and pulled apart the incredibly durable metallic armor. The soldier's face became pale as a sheet, and could only scream as he saw the demon plunging its hands towards his body. Chi! Ling Chen ripped the soldier's body in half, and then threw the two halves away. Seeing how the two soldiers had died, the other soldiers almost had a heart attack. However, the nightmare was about to descend onto them. The incredibly terrifying shadow appeared in front of them, and grabbed two of the soldiers by their necks. Ling Chen squeezed, and their throats, along with the armor, were completely crushed in his hands. He threw them onto the ground and stomped on them with either of his feet, causing cracks in the ground. Ling Chen stomped down with such force that his feet passed through not only the bodies, but also the front and back of the armor. Ling Chen continued to howl as he rained down punches on the soldiers on the ground, with each punch creating a mist of blood. His voice became more and more dreadful as his punches became fiercer and fiercer. Although he had not taken any damage at all, his body was completely dyed in blood. Seeing the scene, no one believed that there was even a fragment of those two soldiers left. Demon! Demon! These incredibly tough soldiers had taken incredibly rigorous and strict training that normal humans couldn't even imagine, and had faced death countless times. However, at this moment, their morale had been completely shattered. Whenever Ling Chen looked at a soldier, they would immediately scream and throw away their heavy machine guns, and sprint in the opposite direction. However, they were unable to escape from this savage demon. A gust of wind blew past, and one soldier was punched in the heart, and he flew through the air. Another gust of wind blew past, and two arms filled with malice and hatred punched through another two soldiers' bodies, crushing their hearts. Ling Chen then raised them up, and threw them onto the ground, mangling their bodies. The peaceful Tianyuan district was filled with howling, screaming, sounds of explosions and blood. The howls caused all the residents to visibly shake with fear each time they heard it. It was a complete nightmare. The reapers stood transfixed, looking at the crazed Ling Chen. No one could utter a single word. After being in hell for so long, they had become desensitized to blood and death, but none of them had seen such cruel killing methods before. Ling Chen ripping apart bodies, crushing them and sending them flying was fueled by the bottomless pit of despair and anger within him. Mu Bingyao tightly hugged Tian, and used her hands and body to cover her eyes and ears. Looking over at her comrades, Mu Bingyao weakly said, Ruo is dead." This news was like a bolt of lightning that struck all of the assassins. They all trembled, and their hearts began to beat like crazy. They knew that there could only be one possibility for Ling Chen becoming so berserk. They all knew how much Ling Chen had loved Shui Ruo, as well as that he would never be able to leave her. The position she held within his heart had surpassed everything, including his own life. Shui Ruo had died. Was it because of that explosion? These bastards! Seeing how horrifically these soldiers were dying, Gueye originally pitied them. However, after hearing this, he was filled with only fury and hatred. Gueye tightly gripped his hands into fists, with his nails piercing his hands, but he couldn't feel any pain. He knew that Shui Ruo dying was a massive blow to Ling Chen, and they were all similarly affected as well. In the hot night air, their bodies all felt cold. The Steel Dragon Corps soldiers were dying in terrible ways, not a single one of them was left with a complete corpse. Before dying, they all experienced the greatest fear of their lives. The last agonizing cry came from a bit of a distance away. The 15 armored vehicles were still parked around the house, but not a single one of their original riders were still alive. Under the dim lighting, they could see that the entire ground was covered with blood, broken limbs, and organs. It was a completely hellish scene. Wah! With no more targets to unleash his rage on, Ling Chen stumbled around, blinded in his rage, until he had calmed down. Tap, 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 tap. Ling Chen walked over, his body looking as if he had just taken a bath in a lake of blood. He had just released such terrifying strength, and yet he was currently walking like an old person. He looked in front of him, but his eyes were completely lifeless. Master! Master! Gueye walked over, and tried to talk to him. However, as soon as he got close, he could feel the icy aura of death all over Ling Chen. Ling Chen did not respond at all to Gueye's words. He slowly walked with heavy footsteps towards where Shui Ruo was. Big brother, Ling Chen's appearance, as well as the stench of blood and guts completely terrified Tian, but she felt even more sad and pained. Mu Bingyao hugged her, not allowing her to get close to Ling Chen. Tian's words didn't evoke any reaction out of Ling Chen either. It was as if all of his senses had been sealed, and he was just like an emotionless puppet. Ling Chen walked into the ruins of the house, and slowly knelt in front of Shui Ruo, then picked her up. His actions were incredibly gentle, as if he was dealing with an extremely precious but fragile treasure. Ling Chen stayed like that for a while. With Shui Ruo in his arms, his expression and breathing became calmer and calmer. Gueye, Mu Bingyao and the others all watched dumbly, and not a single one of them dared to go over, afraid that they would disturb Ling Chen and Shui Ruo. Under the moon and stars, Gueye sat on the ground, gritting his teeth as he treated his own wounds all over his body. Every reaper was covered with wounds, with many of them just centimeters away from their vitals. When fighting, they did not pay their wounds any attention. However, after their enemies had all been killed, the pain hit them at once, causing many of them to almost faint. Much of the blood on the ground had come from them. Even the strongest out of them, Gueye, was hit by 9 bullets. One of the bullets had passed through his thigh, and he sat on the ground, unable to stand up from the pain. After all, they were only human. They had been able to suppress the steel dragon core, but they had also received many injuries. After all, their enemies were one of the 7 most powerful forces the Long family had. They had been completely outclassed in terms of both equipment and numbers. Gueye, it's too dangerous to stay here. Guo Dao, who was wrapped in bandages, limped over. Even though he was in quite a lot of pain, he didn't allow himself to rest. The danger was far from over. Shui Ruo's death had made them all feel incredibly guilty and useless. They all felt that they had contributed to Shui Ruo's death by not being able to protect her properly. Gueye punched the ground as he resolutely replied, "If Master doesn't leave, we won't leave either. However, within a short period of time, we should be safe here." Seeing their 75 steel dragon core soldiers being destroyed, the Long family won't dare to act recklessly. Guo Dao turned around and looked over to where Ling Chen was, a half-destroyed room within the ruins of the house. Ling Chen was hugging Shui Ruo, unable to accept that she was dead. He didn't move at all, and didn't make any noise. No matter how much they yelled or tried to plead with him, there was no response. Seeing that they couldn't do anything, they all retreated outside the house and stood guard. About an hour had passed, and there was still no movement from Ling Chen. They could only wait for Ling Chen to walk out of his pain. Master is incredibly strong, and even defeated hell. He'll definitely be able to recover from this. Guo Dao said as he gritted his teeth. Gueye looked forwards as he muttered, "If it was anything else, I'm sure Master would be able to take it." But Shui Ruo's death, Guo Dao fell silent. 6 years, they had been watching over them for a whole 6 years. They all knew just how much Ling Chen loved Shui Ruo, as well as how important she was to him. Suddenly, a cry of shock rang out. "Ah! Big brother, big brother, big brother!" Guo Dao and Gueye suddenly stood up, their bodies covered in cold sweat as Tian ran out from the ruins, crying, "Big brother, have you seen Big brother? Big brother's gone." "What?" Everyone's eyes widened. Mu Bingyao rushed into the room, and saw Shui Ruo lying peacefully on the bed, but Ling Chen was not there. "Master, where did Master go?" Did any of you see Master? Gueye shouted as he stared down each of the reapers. All of them had very good senses, and had surrounded the house in order to protect Ling Chen. However, not a single one of them had sensed Ling Chen leaving. Pa! Gueye slapped himself in the face, and rushed to where Ling Chen had been kneeling. He touched the ground, and found that it was icy cold. His face darkened and he got up. Crap! Master has left for quite a long time already. Goddamn, we're all trash. We didn't notice at all when he left. With Ling Chen's abilities, it was indeed possible for him to leave without any of them noticing. Big Brother, where did Big Brother go? Quickly find Big Brother. I want Big Brother. Shui Ruo's sudden death had left Tian Tian incredibly distraught, and she simply couldn't lose her big brother as well. She grabbed Mu Bingyao's hands as she began to bawl. Everyone, listen up. Gueye calmed himself down as he clapped his hands. I'm going to look for Master right now. I think I know where he is. I want to tell you all that if you want to go with me to find Master, the chance of surviving will be less than 1%. Moreover, if you die, you might even die for nothing. As such, if you still have important tasks you haven't carried out, or if you have dreams you haven't fulfilled, or if you just don't want to die, then don't come with us. You all have the right to choose for yourselves. I can't make this choice for you. If you are willing to die for Master, stand behind me. Not a single person hesitated as all of the reapers, covered with wounds, stood behind Gueye. Gueye, you bastard, are you trying to insult us? Are you trying to say that some of us might be cowards who are afraid of death? If it wasn't for Master, we would be living lives that are worse than death. Because of Master, we were able to live as humans. Even if we die 100 times for Master, we'd be willing to. What a joke. If I didn't go, I'd hate myself for the rest of my life. Gueye, stop spouting nonsense. Good. Gueye vigorously nodded, as he looked at his comrades. All of them were in terrible shape, but their eyes were resolute, without even a trace of fear. Then I won't waste any more words. Master left in such a manner because he probably didn't want us to go with him. I'm sure he was worried that we would die if we went as well. In this sort of situation, the only place he could be is the Long family's territory. The Long family has countless experts, and 6 years ago, Master attacked there once. That time, he had nearly died, whereas this time, Master evidently doesn't care about living anymore. Because of the suffering that he and Jia Wu had gone through, Ling Chen completely hated the Long family. Nevertheless, after meeting Shui Ruo, he had let go of much of this hatred. However, because of Shui Ruo, his hatred towards the Long family had increased 1,000-fold. Shui Ruo's death caused him to lose his motivation for living. He would create a bloodbath in the Long family, even if it cost him his life. Immediately contact everyone heading over here, and tell them to head towards the Long family's territory. Let's go. The moment all of them set out, none of them expected to return alive. They existed solely to protect Ling Chen. If Ling Chen wanted to use his life to take revenge, they would do the same. After taking a few steps, Gueye stopped, then turned to Mu Bingyao and said, Bingyao, don't come with us. You have a more important job, which is to protect Tian Tian. Take her and go to somewhere safe. Even if it costs us our lives, we will bring Master back safely. Mu Bingyao looked at him, her eyes quivering. Finally, she nodded, and walked away while holding Tian Tian's hand. After walking for a bit, they turned around and watched as the rest of the assassins walked off. At this moment, no one noticed a hazy shadow appear next to Shui Ruo. The shadow reached out, and pressed against Shui Ruo's body from her neck to her stomach. It then drew its hand back, and muttered to itself, her body isn't damaged at all from the outside, it must have been poison. This is interesting, but at this point, the cause of death doesn't matter anymore. This is a golden opportunity, Ling Shui Ruo, to have someone who loves you so much, you must be happy even in death. Let's see if his feelings for you will create a miracle." The shadow pressed its hand against Shui Ruo's chest, and a dark silver light appeared. It covered Shui Ruo's entire body, and after a flash, Shui Ruo's body was gone, not a trace was left. The hazy shadow also disappeared. It was as if all of that had never happened. Only Mu Bingyao and the extremely worried Tian Tian were left. Mu Bingyao picked up Tian Tian and softly said, "Tian Tian, let's go stay next to Ruo Ruo for a bit." "Woo! Woo, big sister, did big sister really leave us? Will I never see big sister again? Woo!" Mu Bingyao. They entered the ruined room, but Shui Ruo was no longer on the bed. Mu Bingyao's pupils contracted, and she raced over. However, no matter where she looked, Shui Ruo's body was nowhere to be seen. A figure covered with blood walked under the streetlights, looking like a vicious demon. It had been 6 years since he had last been to that place, but he still remembered exactly where it was. Far away, he looked at that place, which was lit up with lights, and he smiled. That smile was incredibly sinister and malevolent. "Long family, you took away my first life, and caused me so much pain, and now, you've even taken away from me the most important thing in my life. All of you must die." Bang! Long Tianyun smashed his fist onto the table. The pain in his fist simply couldn't be compared to the shock and anger in his heart. He hated Ling Tian to his bones, and in order to ensure his death, Long Tianyun had sent out 75 Steel Dragon Corps soldiers. Even he thought that this was overdoing it. Moreover, he had even ordered them to use the heavy weaponry. He had never thought that the outcome would be like this. 75 Steel Dragon Corps soldiers, facing 10 or so people. The Long family had invested unthinkable amounts of time and money into the Steel Dragon Corps. Although the Long family had been around for hundreds of years, they only had 1,000 Steep Dragon Corps soldiers. Losing 75 of them in a single night was a massive blow to the Long family. Moreover, he had made the decision to send them himself. His father would be unimaginably angry when he found out about this. Also, Master has been alerted of the incident at the Tianyuan district, and is currently heading home. He will arrive after 1 hour. "Young Master, what should we do? Do you want to call Xianyuan and Long Yu? If they help out, I'm sure." Long Tianyun waved his hand. The 75 Steel Dragon Corps soldiers were like 75 humanoid tanks. Losing all of them had given him an uneasy feeling. Since it's already like this, let's not make any more rash decisions. Since father is coming back, very well, I'll leave it to father. Perhaps he'll punish me, but I'm sure that he'll be even more desperate than me to destroy Ling Tian's forces. Flame Shadow, keep stalling the police. We definitely can't allow any police to get to the Tianyuan district before dawn. Roger. In the remaining time, Long Tianyun sank deep into his thoughts. The information network that he controlled was spread across all of China, as well as some of its neighboring countries. He struggled to think of which force could possibly defeat 75 of his Steel Dragon Corps with just 10 or so people. However, there was not a single force that came to mind. What was even more terrifying was that he did not even detect that these people were in China. It was already quite late into the night, but the Long family residence was bustling with activity, as everyone prepared for the arrival of Long Zhengyang. All of the guards also stood at attention, fully awake. Long Zhengyang was the highest-ranking political figure in China, and almost didn't have any holidays. He would rarely come to the residence, and even when he did, he would only stay for a short period of time. In the 1 hour of preparation time that they had, the Long family residence had been completely cleaned up, and the number of guards had tripled. Finally, a fleet of cars drove in, and a deafening chorus of "Good evening, leader" sounded out. Long Tianyun shook himself awake and walked out. As he walked out, he saw Long Zhengyang expressionlessly walking towards him through a group of people. Long Zhengyan was in his 50s, but looked like he wasn't even 40 yet. His face was extremely calm, and his eyes were like those of a hawk's. Behind him walked two people who looked around his age. Long Tianyun hurriedly went up and greeted up, "Welcome back, father. I hope you've been well, Uncle Xianyuan and Uncle Murong." Uncle Xianyuan and Uncle Murong nodded towards him. In this world, apart from Long Zhengyang, only these two people could cause Long Tianyun to be so respectful to them, Xianyuan Dao and Murong Xiong Tian. The Xianyuan family were simply legends. All of the upper-class circles held a deep respect towards them. The Long family had three main guardian families that protected them, and the Xianyuan family was the head of these three. In fact, the strength of the Xianyuan family surpassed even that of the two other families combined. In an era when guns were prevalent, cold weapons and martial arts were being used less and less. However, the Xianyuan family had been using swords for hundreds of years. Their sword arts were their pride, and their soul. No one knew just how powerful the Xianyuan family's sword arts were, and not many people in the world had even the right to experience them. Despite the advancements in technology, the Xianyuan family was still the Long family's most powerful guardian, and whenever Long Zhengyang appeared, there would always be at least one member from the Xianyuan family with him. Long Zhengyang had faced countless assassination attempts over the years, but he had not even come close to harm every time. Everyone knew just how powerful the Xianyuan family and their swords were. Uncle Xianyuan, Xianyuan Dao, was the older brother of the Xianyuan family's leader, and was also the most powerful person in the Xianyuan family. With his status as the strongest and eldest of his generation, he was more than qualified to be the family leader. However, he had no interest in power, and wanted only to protect the Long family. Another reason was that he only had a daughter, and did not have any sons. As such, the rest of the family did not mind him rejecting this post. Over the years, he had protected Long Zhengyang from countless dangers, and had never allowed him to come to any harm. There was even a rumor that out of all those who had been killed by him, not a single one had even seen his sword before. The speed of his sword was incredible, even bullets couldn't compare to it. Xianyuan Dao's daughter was called Xianyuan Diawu. The Xianyuan family had always been a small family. Currently, they only had 500 people or so. Although they had so few people, they were all monstrously strong. In the Xianyuan family, no matter if one was male or female, they would be trained to use a sword. Every single member was an expert swordsman or swordswoman. Even with a normal sword, they would not even be fazed when facing off against guns and grenades. Although there were only 500 of them, trying to get through them to attack the Long family was simply impossible. Another of the Long family's guardian families was called Long Yu. It was a force that the Long family had created, and were all espers. Espers were incredibly rare, and were either born with, or developed, rare powers and abilities. Long Yu aimed to find people like this, and add them to their ranks. If they were unwilling, they would be dealt with. Over the years, many espers had been added to Long Yu, creating a terrifying force of espers. The head of the 7 main forces of the Long family was, of course, Long Yu. Long Yu's chief, Murong Xiong Tian, was a strength-based esper. His strength was simply inhuman, and his body was incredibly tough. His body could block bullets without even being scratched, and he could easily crush boulders. He could even heavily damage reinforced steel with his bare fists. Even the Xianyuan family's Xianyuan Dao would have trouble dealing with him. Long Zhengyang stood in front of Long Tianyun as he slightly frowned, then emotionlessly said, "Give me an explanation." Long Zhengyang had always been very satisfied with his son. Whether it was his capabilities, charm, intellect, methods, ambition or decisiveness, Long Zhengyang felt that Long Tianyun was well equipped. However, his greatest shortcoming was that he could be impulsive at times. This was something that affected all young people. However, tonight's events had caused Long Zhengyang to be furious. While he was on his way, he had also heard that 75 of his Steel Dragon Corps were missing or killed in action. Despite this, he still gave Long Tianyun a chance to explain. He knew that his son wouldn't have done such a stupid thing without thinking. Long Tianyun did not panic, and nodded, "Let's talk inside, father. I apologize for not telling father in advance, but I had my reasons." They walked into the room and closed the door. Xianyuan Dao and Murong Xiong Tian stood on either side of Long Zhengyang with their eyes closed. Long Zhengyang sat in his chair, looking at Long Tianyun. Long Tianyun poured some tea and gave it to Long Zhengyang, before talking, "Father, do you remember the Ling Tian that I talked to you about?" Long Zhengyang replied, "Ling Chen is Ling Tian." Seeing as Long Zhengyang knew about the name Ling Chen, he must have more or less known what was going on. Long Tianyun nodded, "Indeed. In the virtual world, he antagonized me, and humiliated me many times. He even defeated Xiaoyu, TLN, Sword Emperor, and Song Yen, TLN, Flame Emperor." Hearing this, both Xianyuan Dao and Murong Xiong Tian raised their eyebrows. "He antagonized me again and again, but was not afraid of my retribution. He definitely had a reason for this. As such, I investigated his real-life identity, and found it. Originally, I sent a few people to stealthily assassinate him. However, before they even got close, we lost contact with them. From this we gathered that there were definitely strong people protecting him. And so you mobilized the Steel Dragon Corps?" Long Zhengyang thundered. "Indeed. And even with 75 of them, none of them made it back. What was terrifying, was that there were only 14 enemies." "What?" Long Zhengyang's face changed, and even Xianyuan Dao and Murong Xiong Tian looked shocked. All of them knew how powerful the Steel Dragon Corps were. "That's right, only 14 people." Long Tianyun gritted his teeth as he continued, 14 people were able to destroy 75 fully equipped Steel Dragon Corps soldiers. And we didn't even know that there were such people in Beijing. Moreover, they're evidently hostile towards our Long family. Father, would you be able to have peace of mind knowing that there were these sorts of people around? Long Zhengyang's face darkened. 14 people had actually destroyed 75 Steel Dragon Corps soldiers. Even if it was 14 Long Espers, they wouldn't be able to accomplish such a feat. Bang. At this moment, a gunshot broke the silence. It came from the entrance to the residence, and the alarms began ringing. Long Zhengyang and Long Tianyun shot to their feet, and Xianyuan Dao and Murong Tian looked outside, an icy glint in their eyes. "Who are you? Immediately leave, this is the Long family's residence." The Long family's outer guards appeared. Although they were the lowest-ranking guards in the Long family, each of them were the best of 100. Every person was equipped with a heavy machine gun that weighed 30 kilograms, and there were more than 1,000 of them. Although they were the lowest-ranking guards, just them alone made an unbreachable wall. The 7 main forces were hidden in wait, and there was also the Xianyuan family and Long Yu. As such, Ling Chen had no plans of returning alive. Since Shui Ruo had died, how could he let her leave by herself? Hearing the voice, Ling Chen looked up, and his gray eyes shot out a menacing aura. Ruo, wait for me. I'll be there with you soon. Let me give them a memory they'll never forget first." Ling Chen continued to slowly walk forwards. 100 meters away was where the Long family's residence was. When he looked at them, the malevolent aura caused all of the guards to shudder. Sensing the danger, they all raised their heavy machine guns. "Immediately leave, otherwise we'll shoot." Ling Chen continued to walk. Bang! The gunshot pierced through the silence. The guard resolutely opened fire, and shot Ling Chen in the right kneecap. Without confirming the identity of this person, they didn't dare to kill him. This shot was to incapacitate him. However, when the bullet hit him, they didn't see a spurt of blood. Only after a few seconds did a small trail of blood leak out. Wah wah. The smell of blood once again caused Ling Chen's savage nature to burst out. His eyes widened as he released a demonic howl, and charged towards the person who had shot him. His speed was too fast, and all the guard saw was the blur of a black shadow, followed by screams. The screams came from two guards who were standing together. Each of their chests had a hand protruding through them, and their scream lasted only half a second. Before today, Ling Chen had not killed anyone for 6 years. He didn't want his hands, which held Shui Ruo every night, to be stained with blood. However, Shui Ruo had passed away, so he didn't hold himself back at all. Arg! Ling Chen roared, and threw the corpses into the air, and each of them flew tens of meters away. Ling Chen had grabbed the heavy machine guns in their hands, and held one of the 30 kilograms heavy machine guns in each of his arms, as he madly sprayed at the other guards. Bang 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 bang. Ling Chen was simply too fast, and everything had happened in the blink of an eye. By the time Ling Chen began to rapidly fire around him, the other guards still had not realized what was happening. Ling Chen was a reaper trained in hell, and was skilled in all sorts of assassination methods. Of course, he was also proficient in using guns. Even though he was blinded by his rage, the two heavy machine guns still accurately took lives like two death gods. They shot out at least 5 bullets per second, but every single bullet found a target. What's more, all of the places hit were heads, hearts, temples, solar plexuses. The accuracy was incredible. The sound of heavy machine guns being rapidly fired put the entire Long family on the highest alert. Ling Chen charged towards the Long family's residence with the 2 heavy machine guns, and the guards couldn't even retaliate before being killed. Very soon, Ling Chen ran out of bullets. Ling Chen roared as he flung the 2 heavy machine guns forwards, which accurately smashed into 2 of the guards who were about to shoot him. With the machine guns flying at such a speed, it was impossible for them to dodge. The machine guns crashed into their heads, causing them to explode. As they fell, Ling Chen had already rushed in front of them and picked up their heavy machine guns, as he once again sprayed while running forwards. In the blink of an eye, the guards once again began to scream as they fell down. The rest of the guards finally began to take action, and bullets began to rain down towards Ling Chen. An expert at using guns was often an expert at dodging guns. Not a single one of the Reapers who had followed Ling Chen out of hell would be afraid of this sort of attack. After all, despite being shot at by 75 Steel Dragon Corps, not one of them had suffered fatal injuries. Ling Chen was even more skilled than them, and now that he had become serious again, it was simply impossible to hit him. In fact, Ling Chen's reaction speed and instincts allowed him to dodge without even thinking. However, facing this barrage of bullets, Ling Chen did not dodge or retreat, but rather continued to charge. He took tens of lives every time he swept around with his heavy machine guns as he yelled, "All of you, die." Countless bullets shot into his chest, arms, legs, head and face, causing blood to trickle out from Ling Chen's body. However, this sort of attack that could kill most people 100 times over didn't even slow Ling Chen down. He rushed into a group of soldiers like a streak of black lightning as he wildly shot, causing numerous screams of pain. What's going on? Hearing the guns and screams caused Long Zhengyang to frown. Just as he spoke, the sound of rapid gunfire once again filled the air. Long Tianyun calmly replied, "Looks like someone knows that father is here, and so wanted to take this opportunity to attack." How arrogant of them. All of them knew how impregnable the Long family's residence was. Otherwise, it would be impossible for them to have resided there for hundreds of years. "Xiong Tian, do you want to go and see what's happening?" Long Zhengyang asked. Surprisingly, Murong Xiong Tian shook his head as he replied, "Leader, in this sort of situation, I have to remain within 10 steps of you. However, rest assured, with the defenses here, no one will be able to break through." Long Zhengyang nodded, and said, after thinking for a while, strange, if they were targeting me, the best time to attack would have been when I was arriving. Could it be that they're not targeting me? Xiong Tian, ask the guards what sort of people have come, and how many there are. Roger. Murong Xiong Tian immediately picked up his communication device. Just as he was about to talk, Flame Shadow burst in, as he hurriedly said, "Hurry. Master, young master, we need you to move to a secure location. The intruders have already broken through 3 defense lines, and all of the guards in those 3 defense lines have been killed." What? Long Zhengyang and Long Tianyun gaped at Flame Shadow in shock. Although the outer defense lines comprised of the lowest-ranking guards, but every one of them were highly trained, and had some of the best machine guns available on the market. From when the gunshot started, only about 30 seconds had passed. These intruders had broken through 3 defense lines, and had even killed everyone, in just 30 seconds. It seemed that these intruders were no ordinary people. Do we know what sort of people they are? How many are there? More than 1,000? To be able to break through 3 defense lines in such a short time, it was only logical that the enemy had such numbers. However, what Long Zhengyang couldn't understand was why they had not been detected earlier. It's just one person. A single person. Flame Shadow said breathlessly as he wiped the sweat off his forehead. What? The scene made everyone speechless. He's not afraid of bullets. Xiong Tian, could he be like you, a metal esper, the strongest type of strength-based espers? Long Zhengyan asked as he breathed in a breath of cold air. Although he had seen much in his lifetime, and knew many strong espers, this scene chilled his blood. The only person he knew who could block so many bullets was Murong Xiong Tian. Murong Xiong Tian was called the strongest esper in China, and Long Zhengyang believed that there was not a single person whose body could be compared to his. However, the person in the video was evidently braving the bullets as he charged forwards. Not only that, but his speed is terrifying. Who is this person? This sort of person can shake the whole world. Why haven't we seen this person before? Xianyuan Dao exclaimed. Long Tianyun stared at the person on the screen. Suddenly, he stepped forwards, zoomed in and stared at that person's face. Seeing the person's face clearly, his pupils contracted as he yelled, "Ling Tian! It's Ling Tian!" Flame Shadow gaped in shock. Long Zhengyang's face darkened. "Ling Tian, the same Ling Chen who you sent people to kill?" "That's right. It's him." Long Tianyun clenched his hands into fists, and nodded. "I've seen his photo before, it's definitely him. He must be here for revenge." Seeing this person blocking bullets with his body and kill the guards with ease, he gritted his teeth as he trembled. That person was indeed Ling Tian. He was invincible in the game, and had shocked everyone again and again. However, in real life, he was even more of a monster. No wonder he dared to offend the Long family. Long Tianyun was secretly pleased. It was good that he had discovered Ling Tian's real-life identity earlier, so they could get rid of him as soon as possible. Otherwise, the consequences could have been unthinkable. Even with such abilities, attacking the Long family could only result in death. "Wait, master, young master, this person." Flame Shadow stared at Ling Chen, as his expression and voice became even more shocked. "This person reminds me of that person from 6 years ago. That person also blocked bullets with his bare body and had the speed of a demon." Everyone looked at Flame Shadow. Xianyuan Dao asked in a low voice, "Are you saying that this is the same person who massacred many people in the Long family 6 years ago, and was only stopped by Xianyuan Sheng?" The events from 6 years ago were a shadow over the Long family. It was the shame of the Long family and Xianyuan family. The powerful Long family had been stealthily broken into, and the intruder had killed many people, as well as escaped from all of the guards and the Xianyuan family. This was a great humiliation. However, back then, Long Zhengyang, Xianyuan Dao and Murong Xiong Tian all weren't there, and the person had his face covered. After all those years, they had not been able to find a single trace of that person afterwards. It should be him. The feeling that he gives me is very similar to the one that person gave me, plus, how many people in the world can be this strong? Flame Shadow replied. He was not present at the time, but he had watched the recording. The feeling of terror that he now felt was exactly the same. Not a single person had forgotten about the events of that year. Flame Shadow's words caused Long Tianyun's body to stiffen as he said, "If that's the case, then that explains many things. I had always wondered why Ling Tian acted so antagonistically to me for no reason at all. So it seems that there is great enmity between him and our Long family." Long Zhengyang's frown became deeper. He turned around and looked at Long Tianyun as he asked, "How old is this Ling Tian?" "According to our information, he's 22 years old." Long Tianyun replied. Just as he answered, an icy feeling passed through his entire body, and his eyes widened. Even Xianyuan Dao and Murong Xiong Tian looked shocked. Long Zhengyang nodded, as he slowly said, "Indeed, 22 years old. That means that 6 years ago, he was only 16 years old. A 16-year-old child entered my Long family and caused such an uproar, and killed and injured hundreds of our guards. And he had only been stopped by the leader of the Xianyuan family, but still escaped. Now, he's 22, and can rip through our defense lines in a matter of seconds. Even the Chinese army wouldn't dare to attack our defense lines. Xianyuan, Murong, could you do such a thing at that age? In fact, is there anyone in the world who can do such a thing?" Xianyuan Dao and Murong Xiong Tian fell silent. Only after a while did Murong Xiong Tian reply, "The only person who might be able to accomplish this feat at such an age would be the goddess in the West, Eve. But that's only if the rumors about her godliness are true. As for this person, it's impossible for him to be Eve. After all, Eve is a woman and can't possibly be here." Long Zhengyang continued to talk, "To be able to do such a thing at his age, if he grew to your age, moreover, this person seems to have a deep hatred for my Long family." Xianyuan Dao and Murong Xiong Tian's expressions became serious. Murong Xiong Tian replied, "Indeed, if he is allowed to grow, he will be a deadly threat to us. However, it's good that he's still young and impulsive, and came here by himself. Since he came today, he'll have to stay here forever." Long Zhengyang nodded. He didn't know what sort of background this person had, as well as what caused him to hate the Long family so much. Despite this, Long Zhengyang simply couldn't allow him to live, after knowing what he knew. He had to die. Steel Dragon, Dark Eagle, Blood Wolves and Long Yu have all made preparations, and will arrive soon. Don't worry, leader, since he came today, he won't be able to leave. Wah wah. Ling Chen's roar caused tremors through the air, causing all of the guards' faces to pale. Along with the roar, a wave of malevolent aura and bloodlust exploded out from his body. The bullets that been embedded into his skin were sent flying away. Countless trails of blood flowed out from his body, but the blood then immediately stopped. Ling Chen looked up and savagely stared at the guards in front of him. Looking at the bullets that Ling Chen had forced out from his body, the guards all trembled, and almost couldn't hold their machine guns anymore. The cold feeling of death permeated through their entire bodies, causing them to shudder. This was a monster, a demon. In their fear, most of the guards even forgot to shoot. A black shadow flashed before their eyes, and their bodies flew. Ling Chen once again grabbed their machine guns, and began to shoot, causing countless screams of pain. Before most bodies had even hit the ground, Ling Chen had already run past them. The distance between him and the main residence was getting smaller and smaller. Don't let him get to the main entrance. Ah! The main entrance to the Long family's main residence was tightly shut. On top of the walls, many guards with machine guns and sniper rifles were stationed. However, not a single one of them had fired, as Ling Chen was simply too fast. No matter if it was the machine guns or sniper rifles, none of them could lock on to Ling Chen's position. There was only one target, whereas there were many guards. If they opened fire, they might hit their own comrades, without even hitting the intruder. What's more, the intruder didn't even fear bullets. By the time he had reached main entrance, Ling Chen's entire body had been covered by his own blood. He had lost count of how many people he had killed, as well as how many times he had been shot. When one didn't care about life or death anymore, the number of injuries, as well as the extent of their injuries, simply didn't matter anymore. All that Ling Chen wanted to do was to create the biggest massacre of his life, to use his life to turn the Long family's residence into hell. He had almost run out of bullets, and seeing the Long family's high walls, Ling Chen roared and jumped up. By jumping with his full strength, he was able to leap more than 10 meters high, causing all of the guards to stare in shock. How could a human jump so high? Arg! Ling Chen once again flung his machine guns forwards, causing them to smash into the bewildered guards on the wall. When Ling Chen landed, he was already inside the Long family's main residence. The alarms began to ring even louder, and all of the Long family servants screamed as they ran away. Looking at this familiar place, Ling Chen smirked, looking more and more demonic. It doesn't matter. Since he's come in, he won't be going back out. Murong Xiong Tian coldly said. At this moment, the door was opened then closed, and a serious-looking man in his 40s or 50s walked in. He wore plain clothes, and carried an eye-catching long sword on his back. Behind him were 8 young men who were similarly dressed, and all carried swords on their backs. After entering, he quickly walked forwards and spoke, "Leader, young master, elder brother, I apologize for my tardiness. Who is this intruder? It seems that he has caused quite a bit of commotion." This was the current family leader of the Xianyuan family, Xianyuan Sheng. Within the Xianyuan family, his proficiency with the sword was second only to Xianyuan Dao. "You're not late at all," Long Zhengyang replied as he nodded at him, then looked back at the screen. "There's only one person. It's very likely that he's the same person as the one from 6 years ago." "The one from 6 years ago?" Xianyuan Sheng looked confused for a moment, before his eyes widened in shock as he suddenly remembered. "It's just a possibility. Second brother, you fought with him before, so you should be able to tell," Xianyuan Dao said. Xianyuan Sheng nodded, and looked towards the screen. He only looked for a few seconds before he frowned and spoke in a serious voice, "It's him. He's the one who came 6 years ago. After fighting with this sort of person, it's impossible to forget them. It's been 6 years, and he's actually come again." Very well. Last time, he caused the Long family and the Xianyuan family much chaos and humiliation. This time, I definitely won't let him get away. Otherwise, if this sort of monster was allowed to continue to exist, none of us will be able to have peace of mind. Leader, I'll immediately go and get rid of him. His body is inhumanly strong, and normal bullets and cold weapons are unable to hurt him. Only my azure-edged sword can deal a fatal wound to him. No, it seems that there's no need for the Xianyuan family leader to act, Murong Xiong Tian said as he looked at the screen. The 200 Dark Eagle Corps have arrived, and the Steel Dragon and Blood Wolves Corps, as well as my Long Yu are about to arrive as well. It's impossible for anyone to escape the claws of 200 Dark Eagle Corps soldiers. Xianyuan Sheng looked at the screen. Looks like Chief Murong has not underestimated this person at all, going so far as to deploy 200 Dark Eagle Corps. This person is incredibly dangerous. If it wasn't for my azure-edged sword, I wouldn't have been able to injure him so easily back then. However, with 200 Dark Eagle Corps, that person is good as dead. Put down your guns. No one fire. Kill him immediately and don't let him get any closer. The order rang loud and clear in every guard's ears. After entering the Long family's main residence, none of them used their guns anymore. They only had a single target, but he was incredibly fast. It was more likely that they would hit the Long family's members or staff rather than the target himself. Moreover, guns were essentially useless against him, but could be used by him to mow down guards quickly. Most of the guards stationed in the main residence were equipped with cold weapons, or no weapons at all. However, being stationed within the main residence, they were far stronger than the guards with machine guns outside. The instant Ling Chen landed on the ground, 10 or so figures sprang towards him. Ling Chen suddenly looked up, and saw 2 people smashing their fists towards his head. If these fists landed on a normal person's head, it was sure to shatter immediately. A murderous light flashed in Ling Chen's eyes. He roared, but did not dodge. Instead, he met their fists with his own fists, and with a bang, his right fist instantly shattered the other person's fist. It was like a baseball bat had smashed into a fragile piece of glass. Ling Chen's other hand also smashed into the other person's fist, turning it into a pile of mush. As they cried out in pain, Ling Chen rapidly fired punches around him towards all of the other figures. Every time his fists made contact, an explosion would ring out, and a fist-sized hole would appear in their body. An almost indestructible body, overwhelming power and blinding speed, this was the result of him suffering in heaven and hell. This was the mad scientist's experimental subject that surpassed the rest of mankind. Whenever any of their heavy attacks landed on Ling Chen's body, what each of these soldiers unexpectedly felt was massive pain and numbness. However, whenever Ling Chen attacked, they would either be instantly killed or crippled. Ling Chen did not show any mercy. Each of his attacks was filled with his boundless rage and hatred. Bang! 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 The terrifying sounds caused every person's heart to tremble. In the blink of an eye, 30 of the Long family's elite inner resident soldiers had been massacred or crippled. Those who lay on the ground screaming were instantly killed by Ling Chen with either a hand or foot through their bodies. Ling Chen's arms were dripping with blood. After killing so many soldiers, the bloodlust in his eyes had not been reduced at all, but had become even stronger. The soldiers that had not dared to approach him all stood at a distance with pale faces, and could not move an inch from where they were standing. At this moment, a gust of wind blew past, and one by one, shadowy figures suddenly appeared in front of Ling Chen. Seeing these figures, the Long family soldiers began to exclaim in joy as they hurriedly retreated. The wind stopped, and a fairly short, middle-aged man wearing black clothes stood about 10 meters in front of Ling Chen. He emotionlessly stared at Ling Chen, despite the terrible bloodlust that he was emanating. Between the fingers of his left and right hands, the man carried 3 short daggers in each hand. Behind him, a crowd of people also wearing black appeared. There were 200 of them in total, and they fanned out in an arc facing Ling Chen. The Dark Eagle Corps was the Long family's main assassination force. Each Dark Eagle soldier had been through hellish training and countless life-and-death battles. All of them were first-rate killers. None of them feared death, and could remain calm under any circumstance. They were proficient in hundreds of killing techniques, and their bodies were covered with numerous killing weapons. Their existence was their enemy's worst nightmare. Even the Long family would shudder when mentioning the Dark Eagles. 200 Dark Eagles, including their leader, had appeared to fight a single target. This was the most uneven battle that the Dark Eagles had ever fought. Murong Xiong Tian did not dare to underestimate Ling Chen at all, and the Dark Eagles never underestimated their enemies no matter what. They all stared Ling Chen down with piercing gazes and released their bloodlust. Their appearance caused the rampaging Ling Chen to calm down. He stopped roaring, and stood in his place, staring back at the Dark Eagles. He was incredibly familiar with this sort of bloodlust. He was so familiar with it that he despised it. Whoosh! A gust of cold wind blew past as the right hand of the person in front slightly moved. Swish 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 swish. Assassins never wasted any words with their targets. In the deathly silence, 10 or so shadows flew out towards Ling Chen like arrows. Within their hands was the icy glint of metal. Chi 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 chi. Their speed was incredible, and these 10 or so shadows had passed by Ling Chen's body while attacking him in the blink of an eye. Ling Chen did not move at all. With the assassins moving at such a speed, it was impossible for him to dodge. No one saw Ling Chen move, but they heard more than 10 sounds of metal cutting through flesh. He's dead, no less than expected from the Dark Eagles. Long Tianyun coldly laughed. Long Zhengyang nodded, and just as he was about to speak, what appeared on the screen caused his eyes to suddenly widen. Thud 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 thud. Ling Chen had not moved from where he stood, but now, he was holding a dagger that wasn't in his hands before. The 13 shadows behind him heavily fell onto the ground, as blood spurted from their necks. What? Long Zhengyang and Long Tianyun cried out in shock, and Murong Xiong Tian and Xianyuan Dao's faces both darkened. Impossible. The one who should have died is Ling Tian. Why did the Dark Eagles die? After being attacked by more than 10 Dark Eagles, how is he still alive? This is impossible. Long Tianyun yelled as he gnashed his teeth. Flame Shadow, immediately replay that scene. Long Zhengyang ordered. Ah, Roger. The video footage was rewinded, and played at a speed 10 times slower. They saw 13 shadows rushing at Ling Chen from different directions. Within their hands were short, but incredibly sharp, daggers. As the first Dark Eagle came close to Ling Chen, his dagger stabbing towards Ling Chen's neck, Ling Chen's hand suddenly stretched out. Even at a speed 10 times slower, they were unable to clearly see just how Ling Chen's hand had appeared there. His hand blurred, and suddenly, the dagger was in Ling Chen's hand. Afterwards, without even moving, he had dodged each of the Dark Eagle's attacks, while the dagger in his hand had accurately swept past each of their throats. In less than 2 seconds, his body had twisted more than 13 times, and his hands had sliced more than 13 times. He had dodged every single attack and had slashed more than 13 throats. The moonlight reflected off the dagger in Ling Chen's hand, and they saw that there was not a single drop of blood on his dagger. The Dark Eagles were an incredibly powerful group of expert assassins. However, their opponent was Ling Chen. After all, Ling Chen was an expert assassin of expert assassins. He was the king of all the assassins that had walked out of hell. These assassins' techniques and abilities were simply child's play to him. He was going to use their blood to show them what a true assassin was like. The Dark Eagles reacted quickly. Although Ling Chen moved incredibly quickly, they did not lose their target. Ling Chen rushed towards the 200 Dark Eagles, with the dagger in his hand ready to strike. However, at that moment, Ling Chen's speed exploded to a new level, causing him to disappear once again as he rushed into their ranks. Swish on the screen, Long Zhengyang and the others saw the light reflecting off Ling Chen's dagger moving in an S shape. 8 Dark Eagles simultaneously hit the ground, with blood spraying out of their necks. Ling Chen's new level of speed, as well as the S-shape curve that had taken 8 lives, caused the Long family father and son to gaze in horror and shock, completely speechless. The Dark Eagles wore light clothing, and used light daggers. These daggers were deadly weapons in the hands of the Dark Eagles, but became a death god's scythes in Ling Chen's hands. The extremely well-trained Dark Eagles were always calm and collected. However, Ling Chen's speed and his skills caused the Dark Eagles to fall into chaos. Chi 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 chi. Even if it was the Dark Eagles, whenever Ling Chen chose a target, they were doomed to die. He was simply too fast, and he moved like an illusory shadow within the ranks of the Dark Eagles, not even giving them a chance to react. They were legendary existences to other assassins, but to Ling Chen, they were like a group of clumsy children. In no time at all, more than 30 of the Dark Eagles had fallen. These assassins that could easily single-handedly face off against and kill 100 normal soldiers had been decimated in an instant. By the time they were finally able to react, their bodies were frozen with fear. Illusory shadow killing formation. The leader, with 6 green daggers in his hand, turned around and coldly issued the order. Immediately, all of the Dark Eagles began to move, surrounding their target with many shadows, ready to launch attacks at any time. However, their target with Ling Chen, and their speed and explosive power was nothing to him. No matter how fast they moved, or how bewildering the formation looked, Ling Chen was still easily able to accurately slash their necks. On the other hand, their daggers were unable to even touch Ling Chen. One moment Ling Chen would be within their sights, and in the next, he would be gone. The soldiers could always feel Ling Chen getting closer, but by the time their bodies had begun to move, their necks had already been cut. All that resulted from the Dark Eagles' illusory shadow killing formation was even more of their deaths. The Dark Eagle's leader stood his ground, his face steeled. In order to become a Dark Eagle, one had to pass through torturous training and many life and death trials. In the process, hundreds of people had died, become crippled, or gave up. Over all these years, there were only 900 Dark Eagles in total. They had brought such a large force to kill a single person, and yet they were being destroyed like flies. All of their techniques could not harm Ling Chen at all. Ha! The Dark Eagle's leader finally acted. He locked on to Ling Chen's position, and instantly appeared within 10 steps of him. He swept with his left hand, and 3 green daggers accurately flew towards Ling Chen's feet. However, Ling Chen was simply too fast. Before the 3 daggers had even come close, he had already moved elsewhere. When the 3 daggers reached the ground, they unexpectedly exploded. Boom! The explosion was not too loud, but intense light illuminated the entire Long family's residence. Within those 3 daggers were flash bombs. The blinding light caused everyone to tightly close their eyes. However, within the light, the Dark Eagles did not panic at all, but rushed towards Ling Chen's position. They were all trained to fight in the dark, and could fight easily with their eyes closed. Their other 4 senses were simply superhuman, and were able to instantly locate a target even without their eyes. However, if they knew where Ling Chen's skills and power had come from, as well as his strengths, they definitely wouldn't have done something stupid like using flash bombs. From within the brightness, countless yells of confusion and pain sounded out. After a few seconds the light disappeared. The ground was now filled with bodies on the ground, and only 2 people were standing. Ling Chen and the Dark Eagle's leader. The dagger in Ling Chen's hand been bent, but it still pierced deeply into the Dark Eagle's leader's neck. The 3 daggers in the Dark Eagle's leader's right hand were also stabbed into Ling Chen's chest, but only pierced into his chest by less than 2 centimeters. However, everyone who looked at the eerie greenness of the daggers would know that there was something strange about them. Impossible, feeling his life force slipping away, but seeing Ling Chen stand there completely fine, the Dark Eagle's leader's eyes widened as he slowly fell to the ground. Ling Chen took out the 3 daggers from his chest, and his chest stopped bleeding momentarily. Impossible. Venom Eagle's daggers are coated in extremely strong poison that can instantly destroy one's nerves. Even if it was me, if I was even nicked by those daggers, my whole body would be paralyzed. How can he be completely fine? Murong Xiong Tian yelled as he looked in shock. He had clearly seen those 3 daggers stab into Ling Chen's body, but Venom Eagle had died, whereas Ling Chen didn't seem poisoned at all. In fact, even if the poison was 10 times as potent, Ling Chen still wouldn't have been affected. How could the godly body that the mad scientist created be taken down by poisons made by humans? Evidently, using the Dark Eagle core was not a sound idea, Xianyuan Dao said. His body is too strong, and the Dark Eagles are far below him in terms of skills. Defeating these assassins was incredibly easy for him. The Dark Eagle Corps at the Long family had invested astronomical amounts of time, capital and money on were wiped out by Ling Chen in a short period of time. No matter if it was Long Zhengyang or Murong Xiong Tian, their hearts bled in pain. Xian Yuansheng was unable to remain calm, and once again insisted, "Leader, let me go and take care of him." "No need." Murong Xiong Tian furiously yelled, "Our 7 main forces are more than enough." The Dark Eagles failed, but the Steel Dragons, Blood Wolves and Long Yu are all there now. "He's definitely dead." Xian Yuansheng looked at him, and did not say anything. Ling Chen had single-handedly wiped out 200 Dark Eagles with ease, and even their leader, Venom Eagle, had died for nothing. This was a massive blow to Murong Xiong Tian, who was in charge of the 7 main forces, and aroused his fury. He definitely wouldn't allow the Xianyuan family to upstage him. Steel Dragon Corps, Blood Wolves Corps, eliminate him at all costs. The equipment of the Steel Dragons and Blood Wolves were relatively heavier and more complex, which was why they arrived later than the Dark Eagles. Seeing the ground littered with the corpses of the Dark Eagles, as well as the figure covered in blood and emanating bloodlust, they all breathed in a breath of cold air. Upon receiving their orders, their fighting spirit were ignited. 100 Steel Dragon Corps soldiers and 100 Blood Wolves Corps soldiers blocked Ling Chen's way. Upon seeing them, Ling Chen's rage and bloodlust spread even more. It was because of the Steel Dragon Corps that his home had been destroyed, and Shui Rua had. Argh! The despairing demon within him was once again awakened, and Ling Chen unleashed an ear-shattering howl. He threw away Venom Eagle's daggers, and charged towards the Steel Dragon Corps. The Steel Dragon Corps also roared, charging towards Ling Chen with their heavy armor. Bang! Ling Chen's fist ferociously punched through the chest of the Steel Dragon soldier at the front. The fragments of the metal armor buried themselves deep into the soldier's heart, causing him to instantly die. In the blink of an eye, Ling Chen had been surrounded by the Steel Dragon Corps. He did not use his speed to escape from the encirclement, but rather used his brute strength to tear apart their armor and destroy their bodies. The Steel Dragon soldiers' armor could withstand normal bullets easily, but were unable to stop even one of Ling Chen's attacks. Whether it was Ling Chen's fists, feet or elbows, their armor would be pierced like tofu, causing the soldiers to scream out in pain. Boom! 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 The explosions, which sounded like missiles exploding, rang loudly in every person's ears and heart. The Steel Dragon soldiers' armor were not only unable to protect them from Ling Chen's attacks, but slowed them down. The Steel Dragon soldiers were sent flying one by one, and their armor was just as badly mangled as their bodies. They either instantly died or lay on the ground, howling in pain. They couldn't believe that a human could be so powerful. Being hit by Ling Chen was like being hit by a 1,000-kilogram heavy hammer. The Steel Dragon soldiers' heavy armor didn't delay their deaths by a single bit, but were able to slow down Ling Chen's advancement. Of course, the price that they paid were their lives. By the time Ling Chen had massacred 50 of the Steel Dragon Corps, the Blood Wolves finally appeared. If the Steel Dragons were humanoid tanks, the Blood Wolves were killing machines. They didn't have the defense that the Steel Dragon soldiers' armor provided, instead wearing light armor, but each person held swords that were 1 foot long. Their eyes radiated bestial madness. When facing off against enemies, they didn't care about their own lives. The only thing that mattered to them was the death of their enemies. Argh! The appearance of the Blood Wolves caused the entire Long family's residence to be enveloped in bloodlust. The Blood Wolves roared and ran through the ranks of the Steel Dragons, charging towards Ling Chen. Their incredibly sharp swords swung towards Ling Chen's chest and throat. Ling Chen's heavy attacks could annihilate even the heavy-armored Steel Dragons, let alone these Blood Wolves. The Blood Wolves' bloodlust also spurred on Ling Chen's berserk state, as he also swept towards them. Facing Ling Chen, 3 of the Blood Wolves showed no fear at all as they ran into Ling Chen's attacks, their swords piercing towards Ling Chen's vitals, they simply didn't care about their own lives. Bang bang bang. The 3 blood wolves were rendered into 6 halves by Ling Chen's kicks, but all 3 of them drove their swords towards Ling Chen's chest, and deeply pierced into it. 3 swords also whistled from behind him, as they slashed against Ling Chen's back. In attacking the steel dragon core, every attack had consumed quite a lot of strength, and his reactions and agility had greatly suffered. However, the 3 swords could only leave cuts on his back, and were unable to cut into him. The pain caused Ling Chen to become even more berserk as he pulled out the 3 swords out of his chest, and flung them behind him. The swords spun as they chopped the 3 blood wolves behind him in half, and Ling Chen continued to charge at the steel dragons and blood wolves as he howled. The entrance of the suicidal blood wolves caused the smell of blood to become even stronger. There was nothing within Ling Chen's heart and mind but endless killing. He swung 2 swords that he had taken from the blood wolves, slicing all who approached him. The blood wolves fell one by one, but before dying, they would always use their opportunity to cut or pierce him. Within the Long family's hall, everyone silently watched the screen. The steel dragons and blood wolves had come quite quickly, and were also dying incredibly quickly. All the steel dragons could do was buy a bit of time, and waste a bit of Ling Chen's stamina, whereas the blood wolves sacrificed their lives to injure him again and again. They weren't normal soldiers, but the Long family's 7 main forces. Those who had not been present 6 years ago finally understood how a single person had thrown the entire Long family into chaos. The steel dragons and blood wolves were rapidly dying, but Ling Chen's body was also covered in countless cuts and stab wounds. Gradually, his movements began to slow down. Murong Xiong Tian's heart bled as he watched this, and his fists were tightly clenched into fists. Finally, he gave an order in a low voice, "He can't last for much longer. Long Yuan, attack!" Bang! 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 If the blood wolves were a group of bloodthirsty wolves, Ling Chen was a demon god. Whenever Ling Chen attacked with his sword, the blood wolf soldiers would be chopped in half. Whenever Ling Chen attacked with his body, they would explode into pieces. Anyone who didn't personally witness this scene wouldn't be able to believe that such an ordinary-looking body could release so much power. Ling Chen sustained more and more injuries, but he simply didn't care. In fact, he didn't even try to protect himself. He would allow the blood wolves to cut him, but would use his sword or body to destroy them one by one. At the back, a skinny man stood there, watching. He watched as the blood wolves died one by one, and his gaze became colder and colder. The murderous intent that his body was releasing also grew and grew. Crack! The sword in Ling Chen's hands finally broke as he sliced at a steel dragon soldier's armor. The sound finally spurred the skinny man into action. Like a ravenous wolf, he charged past all of his subordinates, and stabbed towards Ling Chen's throat with his claw-like hands. Shockingly, Ling Chen sensed the threat of death from this attack, and he met it with a punch. Bang! A punch that would have been able to destroy both the armor and body of a steel dragon soldier had not been able to blast the skinny man away. Instead, the skinny man's fingers in his right hand all broke, and his entire arm became numb. At the same time, 5 claws also stabbed into Ling Chen's fist, creating 5 bloody holes that pierced to his bones. The skinny man didn't even frown as his fingers were broken, and his other hand immediately snaked towards Ling Chen's throat. Ling Chen instantly twisted his body, and the skinny man's claws passed his throat, but sank into his shoulder. All 5 claws were deeply embedded, causing blood to quickly flow out. The pain from his left hand and shoulder caused Ling Chen to roar in fury as he heavily smashed his right fist into the man's chest. Bang! A spurt of blood rushed out from the skinny man's mouth, landing on Ling Chen. His eyes started to dim, but still held a berserk look within them. He used his remaining strength to leap forwards and tightly grab onto Ling Chen, as he howled and a light shone from his back. All of the onlookers' faces changed when they saw this. Leader! Get down! Boom! The light and shockwave from the explosion blinded and deafened everyone nearby. The entire Long family's residence shook, and countless screams filled the air as the blood wolves and steel dragons who were nearby were blasted into the air. The blood wolves were all in pieces, whereas only half of the steel dragons had survived. Those who had survived were unable to move at all. Leader! Seeing the devastating explosion, the remaining blood wolves cried out in grief. In order to take down this intruder, their leader had used the incredibly destructive bomb that he always had on his back. This explosion had caused all of the blood wolves and steel dragons nearby to be instantly killed or severely injured. They were all sure that Ling Chen was dead beyond a doubt. All of the blood wolves knelt down as they howled in grief. This was the only choice they had left. Although they had sacrificed many lives, the enemy was simply too powerful. However, the price was the blood wolves' leader's life. After the light and shockwave had passed, everyone could clearly see a crater that was 30 meters wide and 10 meters deep. Within the crater and around it was filled with blood and severed limbs. In the central hall, looking at the gigantic crater, Long Zhengyang breathed out a sigh of relief. It's finally over. That explosion was definitely enough to annihilate anyone within its blast radius. Although he was sure that the intruder was dead, he simply couldn't feel at ease. After all, the price they had paid was the lives of countless Long family soldiers, dark eagles, blood wolves, and steel dragons. Moreover, even the leaders of the dark eagles and blood wolves had died. To the Long family, this had been a Pyrrhic victory. This was a catastrophe on the level of the one 6 years ago. What's more, these two catastrophes had actually happened because of a single person. Who would have thought that Owl Wolf would have been forced to use such drastic measures? He probably knew that he was definitely going to die, and although the explosion would kill many of his subordinates, it would be better than them all dying under that demon's hands. No less than expected from the Wolf King. Wolves like him are incredibly rare. Who knows when another like him will appear. If I had known that this would happen, I would have gone to take him down myself. Murong Xiong Tian said in grief. The back entrance of the Long family's residence was opened, and people wearing different clothes poured in. It was the Long Espers. The scene that greeted them left them completely dumbfounded. There were less than 50 surviving blood wolves and steel dragons combined. Half of them could not even fight anymore, while the other half had injuries ranging from light to severe. The Long family's members were still in shock from what had just happened. Even after hearing that the intruder had been blown up, no one dared to venture outside. Just the sheer amount of blood was able to cause most of them to faint. The steel dragon and blood wolf soldiers began to be sent to the hospital, while Long Yu stayed back to clean up. Everything was finally over, but the price they had paid caused Long Zhengyang's heart to become incredibly heavy. Over 300 elite soldiers from the 7 main forces had died under Ling Chen's hands, including the leaders of the Dark Eagles and Blood Wolves. It was a gigantic blow to the Long family. This horrific battle had also caused a great amount of damage to the Long family's residence, and mental effects experienced by every person present, for a long time. The Long Espers finally arrived, and started to clean up the corpses. Long Zhengyang sighed and said, "Let's also go out and have a look." As he turned to leave, he glanced at the screen. However, as soon as he saw it, his body froze, as his eyes remained glued to the screen. At this moment, a cry of pain sounded out. The cry of pain was especially loud, and came from a Long Esper who had wandered to the edge of the crater. The Esper had suddenly disappeared, and a bloodied hand slowly emerged from the edge of the crater. The owner of the hand pulled himself out of the crater. All of his clothes had been destroyed, and his body was completely covered with blood. The congealing blood stuck to the scraps of his clothes, hair and skin together. He moved slowly, but was still able to climb out of the crater. The moment he walked out, he swayed, and fell to the ground on one knee. However, he stood up while trembling, and stared murderously at the people in front of him. Although he looked incredibly weak, the bloodlust he was emitting was incredible. He seemed like a blood god who had just returned from hell. All of you must die. His voice was incredibly weak, but it somehow filled the entire residence, causing everyone to tremble with fear. This is impossible. That explosion, how can he still be alive? Long Tianyun yelled as he stared wide-eyed. Owl Wolf had been clutching onto him during the explosion. Even steel would have been blasted to shreds if it had been so close to the bomb. This is incredibly difficult to accept. It's simply impossible. Xianyuansheng also said in shock. Is he a monster? Flame Shadow said, his voice trembling. An icy feeling came over Long Zhengyang. Not even the incredibly tough Murong Xiong Tian would have been able to survive an explosion at such a distance, and not be missing any limbs. This individual couldn't be described as a human anymore, he was simply a monster. He just couldn't understand how the Long family had offended such a monster, and neither could he comprehend how such a monster could possibly exist. Xianyuan Dao's face was also filled with shock. He slowly said, "This is indeed hard to believe, however, although he's not dead, he's been gravely injured, and can't even stand properly anymore. He can't fight anymore, so Long you should be able to take care of him." "Don't kill him yet," Long Zhengyang calmly said, "he's still alive, but he's not a threat anymore. Tell the mental espers to destroy his mind, and ask him why he hates our Long family so much. They can get rid of him afterwards." The rest of them all nodded. This person had launched 2 terrifying attacks on the Long family, but they still didn't know the reason. Murong Xiong Tian immediately gave the order, "Shifeng, go and control his mind, and ask him what he has against the Long family, or who's giving him orders." Ling Chen's appearance caused all of the Long Yu soldiers to feel incredibly shocked. The Dark Eagles, Steel Dragons and Blood Wolves had all been ripped apart by him, and although he was incredibly weak, they still felt pressured. As they received the order from Murong Xiong Tian, a person wearing a whole body of green clothes slowly walked out, and stood 20 meters away from Ling Chen. He looked up, and a mysterious light shone from his eyes into Ling Chen's eyes. All Long Yu espers were either born with their powers or later developed them. They didn't have a uniform, and all specialized in different things. The most terrifying of them all were the mental espers. A mental esper could, without any warning, control another person or destroy their mind from quite a distance away. However, these sorts of espers were rare. Within Long Yu, there were only 8 of them. 6 of them were present at the scene. The person in green clothes was called Shifeng, and was an incredibly strong mental esper. As he looked into Ling Chen's eyes, his mental energy swept out and collided into Ling Chen's mental energy. The familiar feeling of his mental energy being attacked, which he had hated, came into his head. Within heaven, he had endured this sort of training almost constantly. Because of this mental energy stimulation, his mental energy had come close to collapsing on numerous occasions, causing it to break through new levels again and again. Apart from even himself, no one would be able to imagine just how torturous the training was, and they weren't even able to use words to express what it was like. When the Esper's attack reached Ling Chen's mind, his mental energy defenses were instantly awakened, completely blocking the attack. It then immediately counterattacked, like a vicious viper. 1 second, within 1 second of the Esper, Shifeng, attacking Ling Chen's mind, his entire body stiffened as his eyes widened. His eyes remained wide open while he fell to the ground, never to breathe again. All of Long Yu looked on with shock. What's going on? Could it be that he's a mental esper who's even stronger than Shifeng? Murong Xiong Tian said as he raised his eyebrows. He quickly picked up his communication device and yelled, "Demon Eyes, Soul Chaser, Qian Luo, Crimson Eyes, Azure Snake, go and attack together and control his mind." He seems to also be a mental esper, so don't let down your guards, you must work together. If you can't control his mind, then destroy it. The remaining 5 mental espers walked out together, and stood in formation. Their breathing became synchronized, and they released the mental energy towards Ling Chen together. Shifeng's failure showed that Ling Chen had incredibly strong mental energy. Not only had Shifeng failed, but the counterattack had even killed him. The effects of counterattacks were becoming unconscious if it was light, or complete destruction of the mind if it was severe. Shifeng was not the strongest mental esper in Longyu, but his instant death raised alarm bells for the others. The 5 of them worked together, using their full strength. Even if the enemy had incredibly strong mental energy, the 5 of them would definitely be able to overcome him. 5 powerful streams of mental energy intertwined, creating a powerful mental energy beast that rushed towards Ling Chen's mind. However, even if the 5 of their mental energies combined, how would it amount to even 1% of Ling Chen's mental energy? To Ling Chen, their mental energy beast was like a tiny bug. However, it was still much more powerful than Shifeng's attack, and while it did not hurt Ling Chen, it awakened his anger. His bloodshot eyes opened, as he roared. Arg! 1 second, again, after only 1 second had passed, the 5 mental espers' bodies froze, their eyes widened and lost their color. Subsequently, just like Shifeng, they all fell to the ground, unmoving. As he roared, Ling Chen, who couldn't even stand properly, suddenly burst with energy again as he charged at the Longyu espers, filled with bloodlust. This is impossible. Absolutely impossible. Seeing the 5 espers all fall down, Murong Xiong Tian simply couldn't believe his eyes. He believed that Shifeng had failed because he had underestimated Ling Chen, and did not expect that Ling Chen was also a mental esper. However, 5 mental espers that were working together had been instantly defeated. Moreover, they weren't just defeated, they had been killed by their opponent's mental energy. What was going on? Could it be that he was not only a mental esper, but an incredibly powerful one as well? A terrifying body, terrifying strength, terrifying speed, and terrifying mental energy as well. The information clearly stated that he was only 22 years old. The sinking feeling in Long Zhengyang, Xianyuan Dao, and Murong Xiong Tian's hearts became worse and worse. Cries of pain began to sound out, and on the screen, the weakened monster once again sprang into action. His speed had not reduced by a single bit, and he had reached the espers before they could even realize what was happening. Except for the strength-based espers, none of them could compare to even a normal soldier in terms of their bodies or speed. Even the Steel Dragon soldiers couldn't withstand a single hit from Ling Chen. This was even more so for the Longyu espers. As soon as Ling Chen got close, all that was waiting for them was death. Ling Chen punched out twice, easily punching through 2 espers like they were made of tofu. Seeing what was happening, the espers all hurriedly started to use their powers to attack. This was the first time Long Zhengyang had felt such fear, and the one who had caused this fear was only 22 years old. If he was allowed to leave here alive, Long Zhengyang would have to live the rest of his days in worry and fear. He slowly said in a low voice, "He's nearly finished. This rampage is surely the last of his strength. Xiong Tian, go and immediately kill him." Roger. Murong Xiong Tian nodded. Just as Long Zhengyang had said, Ling Chen was almost out of energy. He had been expending huge amounts of strength, and much blood had leaked out from the countless wounds all over his body. However, his incredibly strong mental energy, despair from Shui Ruo dying in his bloodlust gave him the power not to fall. His consciousness was becoming hazy, but he squeezed energy from every cell in his body to defeat the enemies around him. The Esper's abilities all required time to use, just like spells in games that required casting times. With Ling Chen's terrifying speed and power, most Espers were unable to even launch attacks in time, and none of them were able to lock onto him or withstand even a single blow from him. The Espers fell one by one, and very soon, Ling Chen had annihilated the majority of them. They were dying far faster than the steel dragons and blood wolves. Long Yu were one of the 7 main forces of the Long family, and possessed abilities that the other 6 forces could never have. However, against Ling Chen, they had no advantage at all, and were even less effective than the Dark Eagles. The Long Yu espers fell like flies, causing onlookers to tremble with fear. These superhuman existences were like sheep waiting to be slaughtered by Ling Chen. The door of the central hall was explosively pushed open, then heavily closed. Murong Xiong Tian marched out, and seeing the ground littered with the corpses of Long Yu espers, his face twisted as he yelled, "Get out of the way! Chief Murong! Chief! It's Chief Murong! He's come to save us! Thank God!" Murong Xiong Tian was incredibly powerful, and his pride was proportional to his strength. When he faced off against enemies, he wouldn't let anyone else help him. The Long Yu espers were already completely terrified by Ling Chen, and so they all breathed a sigh of relief and quickly left when they saw Murong Xiong Tian. Bang! After suddenly losing his targets, Ling Chen's rage quickly disappeared and a wave of pain passed through his head. He collapsed onto one knee and raggedly breathed as he coughed out pools of blood. He had countless wounds on his body, cuts, stab wounds, claw marks, burns and frozen areas from esper attacks. It was impossible to know just how many wounds there were, but he knew that he definitely had more wounds than when he had fought Instructor Hell all those years ago. Seeing Ling Chen on one knee, completely unable to get up, Murong Xiong Tian's emotions were quite complex. He hated Ling Chen, as he had caused severe casualties to 4 of his 7 forces, and had caused him to lose much face in front of Long Zhengyang. However, deep down within his heart, Murong Xiong Tian secretly respected and admired him. Murong Xiong Tian was sure that when he was at the same age, he wouldn't even be worthy to put on Ling Chen's shoes for him. If he was given the opportunity to grow, then his future would be limitless. "Young man, you're called Ling Chen, right?" Murong Xiong Tian slowly asked. Although Long Zhengyang didn't want him to waste any words, he simply couldn't stop himself. Indeed, after he killed this young man, he might never meet another like him again. He continued, "Although I don't know what you have against the Long family, but it shouldn't be some kind of irreconcilable hatred. Seeing you like this, it doesn't seem like you plan to go back alive. I'll be honest and say that in my life, you're the first young person to make me feel afraid. Just this alone makes you quite outstanding. In your current state, it's not quite fair to go up against me, but it's not that shameful to die by my hands." Ling Chen stopped raggedly breathing, and suddenly raised his head. The killing intent that shot out from his eyes caused Murong Xiong Tian to freeze, and a cold and hoarse voice that sounded like that of a demon's traveled into his ears. "The person who will die, is you." Ling Chen, who clearly looked completely exhausted, suddenly charged towards Murong Xiong Tian like a ferocious leopard. His right fist, which was covered with wounds and blood, streaked towards Murong Xiong Tian's heart. Murong Xiong Tian could only watch in shock. Where did this energy come from? With so many wounds and after using up so much strength and losing so much blood, he was still able to unleash such a blow. Bang! Ling Chen's fist savagely struck Murong Xiong Tian's chest, and the sound of bones being dislocated sounded out clearly. Ling Chen flew backwards, and crashed into the ground. His entire right fist was mangled, and the massive pain that erupted from it caused him to almost lose control of it. Murong Xiong Tian's upper body slightly leaned backwards, and there was a large hole in his clothes where Ling Chen had struck him. Bronze-colored skin could be seen within the hole, as well as a bright red fist print. The burning pain that the punch gave him caused Murong Xiong Tian to frown. Ling Chen was able to unleash such a powerful attack in such a weak condition. He was definitely qualified to be called a monster. Ling Chen slowly stood up, with his left hand covering his right hand. He suddenly wrenched his right hand, and the bones in his right hand were forced back together with a crack. He roared, then charged towards Murong Xiong Tian, using his right hand to once again punch towards his heart. This time, Murong Xiong Tian did not stand still. He gave a low yell as he punched out to meet Ling Chen's fist. Bang! Arg! Murong Xiong Tian's body swayed, whereas Ling Chen's body was once again blasted away like a sandbag. He flipped over twice in the air before hitting the ground, and his entire body was in massive pain. His entire right arm hung limp, but he gritted his teeth and used his left arm to stand up again. Just as he stood up, blood spurted out from his mouth, and he fell down once more. Humph, he wanted to compete with Uncle Murong in strength? How audacious! Long Tian Yun said as he coldly laughed. Although the Long family had suffered great losses, but Ling Chen was evidently almost spent. Now that Ling Chen was so powerless, Long Tian Yun could finally relax again, and without Ling Chen, the greatest thorn in his side would be gone. If he was in his best condition, he might not lose. Xianyuan Dao calmly said. Everyone fell silent. Ling Chen once again stood up, and his aura was so weak that Murong Xiong Tian almost couldn't feel it anymore. With another crack, Ling Chen's dislocated right arm was pushed back into place by his left hand. From beginning to end, he had not let out a single cry of pain. Murong Xiong Tian frowned as he said, Ling Chen, you should know that in your current condition, all of your struggling is useless. This will just prolong your suffering. The one who will die, is you. Ling Chen rasped as he glared at him. Murong Xiong Tian's eyes narrowed, and he lifted up both hands, forget it, I'll send you on your way now. Arg! Ling Chen stood up straight, and howled as he charged at Murong Xiong Tian and swung at him in the exact same way as the previous 2 times. Humph! Murong Xiong Tian coldly harumphed as he gathered his strength into his right fist. He completely ignored Ling Chen's attack, as he swung towards Ling Chen's head. If this punch hit him, Ling Chen's head would definitely be blown to pieces. However, just as their bodies were about to clash, the figure in front of Murong Xiong Tian suddenly blurred, then disappeared. Murong Xiong Tian's full-strength punch only hit an afterimage, causing him to fall forwards. From his side, an incredibly sharp knife came whistling at him. Ling Chen's fist had opened into a knife-hand strike, and stabbed towards his head. Murong Xiong Tian could only watch as it stabbed into his temple. Bang! Being hit by Ling Chen's knife-hand strike made it feel like millions of wasps had suddenly flown into his head, causing Murong Xiong Tian's world to blur. Despite the fact that he was a metal esper, the attack left him shaken. His consciousness was scattered, and his body lost its balance. Murong Xiong Tian fell forwards, smashing his head onto the ground. Wah wah! Ling Chen hoarsely roared, and his blood-stained body leapt high into the air. He gripped both his hands into fists and used all the strength in his body to smash them downwards. Boom! Stones and sand filled the air as the devastating strike shook the ground. Murong Xiong Tian's entire head had been buried into the ground, and blood leaked from all 7 of his orifices, eyes, nose, ears, mouth, dyeing the ground red. After delivering that strike, Ling Chen weakly sat on the ground. Murong Xiong Tian's body was twisted, and did not move at all. Even if he had a body that was as solid as metal, it was impossible to withstand 2 strong, direct hits to the head. Chief Murong. All of the Long Yu espers stared in shock and fear. All of the people in the hall also gaped at the scene. Long Zhengyang immediately turned and yelled, Xianyuan. Hurry and go. Roger. Xianyuan Sheng did not hesitate at all as he yelled, move out. He opened the door and quickly left with the 8 people he had brought with him as he pulled out the azure edge sword. That sword could cut through metal like butter. 6 years ago, it was this sword that had injured Ling Chen countless times, causing him to flee, and almost die. I.